Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Preservation Board for June the 27th, 2022. I'm going to call a roll to establish who's here. I am here. Commissioner Robinson, are you here?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, are you here? Commissioner Killeen, are you here?
Present.
Commissioner Richardson, are you here?
Here.
Commissioner Allen, are you here?
Present.
Alderman Coder, are you here?
Hey, what is this laptop doing now?
Just cancel
I'm trying. Okay, there.
Alderman Coder's here. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you very much. I count 6 commissioners. Meg, is that your count also?
It is, with 5 present and 1 absent. Oh, sorry, you are here as well, so that's 6 present, 1 absent, yes.
Thank you for making this so much easier. Okay, commissioners, take a look through the agenda. Is this agenda in the order that everybody is comfortable with?
Mr. Chairman, I think we should hear items G and H first, or make a general motion to cover them.
Is there anybody here, Meg, to speak for or against agenda items G and H?
No one has yet signed into the chat, but I haven't done my introductory remarks, so I could just ask, first of all, that anyone who's not speaking to please stay on mute. We have a lot of people in the room. We want to be sure that everyone is heard clearly. And if you are here to speak on an agenda item, please put your full name, first and last names, and the address of the agenda item into the chat. We will call on you when we get to that item. Comments that are put in the chat do not count toward the public record. So if you want to say something that's part of the record, you need to put your name and full name and agenda address in the chat, and we will call on you. So at this point, there's still no one putting any names in the chat for either of the 2 nominations to the National Register.
Commissioners, does anybody object to moving agenda items G and H to the top of the agenda? Okay, commissioners, looking through the agenda as it's presented to us, does anybody need to recuse themselves from voting on any of the issues listed here? Agenda items A through H. Okay, nobody recuses themselves. We will, unless there's an objection, move G and H to the top of the agenda. All those in favor of this being agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the agenda is adopted. Calling first agenda items G and H. Commissioner Allen, have you got a motion?
Yes. I move that we direct the Preservation Board to make reports to the State Historic Preservation Office for the National Register Area of Significance listed in the staff report for each item.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I apologize, but someone, Ms. Rachel Consoloy of Rosen Preservation is the preparer, and she is in the room. I'm not sure if she wants to speak, but she did put her name in the chat.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call a roll. Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Killeen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson, do you vote yes or no?
Oh, God.
Commissioner Allen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Alderman Coder, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson, do you vote yes or no? Okay, commissioners, I count 4 yeses, 1 present and not voting, and 1 abstention from the chair. The motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner Allen. Okay, commissioners, moving to agenda item A, 4490, 4494, Lindell.
Hi, give me a moment to share my screen. Okay. Just 1 moment, commissioners, board members. No, no. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so good afternoon. My name is Meg Lusteau. I'm the Director of the Cultural Resources Office, and I am this evening presenting the agenda item for 4490 and 4494 Lindell Boulevard. This is a preliminary review to demolish the Optimist International Tower and partially demolish the Optimist International Pavilion to construct a 7 to 8 story apartment building with 2 levels of underground parking. This is located in the Central West End in ward that's currently 17 and will be 9. The owner of the property is Optimist International and the applicant is Ocean City 1 LLC / Lux Living LLC. So the project. The Optimist International property consists of the Pavilion building at 4494 Lindell, erected in 1961-62, and the taller tower building to its east at 4490 Lindell, completed in 1978. Both were designed by Harry Van Hofen of the firm Schwartz and Hofen. The Optimist International organization, which once used the property as its headquarters, has had it listed for sale for several years. In 2014, Covington Realty Partners of Clayton applied to demolish both buildings and construct a residential tower, but the project did not go forward and was never reviewed by the Preservation Board. A year later, the Cohen Group planned to purchase the property and convert both buildings into Class A office space. The board granted preliminary approval to that proposal at its October 2015 meeting, but the project also did not go forward. In 2021, Ocean City 1 LLC / Lux Living / Vic Alston applied for preliminary review to demolish both buildings and construct a 7.5 story U-shaped apartment building with interior parking. The Preservation Board voted to withhold preliminary approval for that application. And I will just now go through slides so we can make sure that everyone is familiar with the buildings. This is the west elevation of the pavilion taken from Taylor. This is the south elevation taken from the back street. It's hard to get a good shot of the backside of the tower. Here's the southwest corner of the pavilion building and a detail of the pavilion building. The current application proposes to demolish the tower and all but the north and west facades of the pavilion. An L-shaped 7 to 8 story apartment building with 2 levels of underground parking would be constructed on the property, incorporating the retained facades. The site is located within the boundaries of the Central West End Certified Local Historic District, Ordinance number 69423. It is also in a Preservation Review District, Ordinance 64689, and both ordinances are relevant to this review. The following analysis considers the demolition of the Optimist Tower and partial demolition of the Optimist Pavilion first. Review of the subsequent development proposal follows. It is important to note that the Cultural Resources Office considers this proposal a demolition, as it calls for the raising of all but 2 walls of the pavilion. As you can see in this slide, the gray areas show the existing buildings. The blue lines show what's proposed for retention. This project is an example of facadism, the architectural and construction practice in which only the facade of the building is retained and a new building erected behind or around it. Facadism is not preservation. Furthermore, we are concerned about the impact of the excavation of 2 levels of underground parking on the stability of the 2 remaining facades, as the walls of the underground parking garage would be recessed by 1 foot from the existing walls, as you can see in this slide right here. This is the wall of the underground parking, and this is the exterior wall proposed to be retained. We have not yet received detailed engineering drawings explaining how those walls would be stabilized and protected. And I do want to point out that on April 4th of 2022, we sent an email to the applicant saying we look forward to getting detailed engineering drawings explaining how the Lindell and Taylor facades would be kept stable and intact during the demolition of the rest of the building and during the excavation of 2 floors of parking below. The drawing should also reflect how the walls would be incorporated into the proposed new structure. This is what we received in response to that request. This outlines step 1, which shows a hatch line, which would be the spot for a continuous steel beam. Step 2, some solid lines about connecting the interior and exterior steel beams. And then step 3 with braces against those beams. And step 4, or not step 4, but I guess another drawing. So relevant legislation. The Optimist site is located within the Central West End Certified Historic District. The primary objective of the Central West End Historic District is to maintain the distinctive character, quality of construction, and individual architectural integrity of the structures within the historic district. In pursuit of this objective, these standards embrace as their fundamental underlying principle the concept that original or historically significant materials and architectural features of the buildings within the historic district shall be maintained and repaired whenever possible rather than replaced. I'll not read all of it. It's in the staff report, but I will say that our comment on this is the intent statement of the district standards does not differentiate between contributing and non-contributing buildings. The stated primary objective is to maintain the distinctive character, quality of construction, and individual architectural integrity of structures within the district. We then move on to the portion of the standards that deal with demolition. Buildings identified as contributing properties in the Central West End Certified Local Historic District are considered historically significant to the character and integrity of the historic district. However, construction continued after the period of significance identified for the district, and those buildings may also be architecturally significant, having become part of the historic character of the Central West End. Any of these buildings determined eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places by the State Historic Preservation Office, or that are determined by the Cultural Resources Office to be merit or high merit properties, are also historically significant. All architecturally and historically significant buildings are an irreplaceable asset, and as such, their demolition is not allowed without a specific recommendation for demolition from the Cultural Resources Office, or if CRO has denied that application, then a full hearing by the Preservation Board and approval by that board. Our comments. When the Central West End standards were revised in 2013 by Ordinance 69421, it was recognized that later buildings in the district would have attained significance as time passed and more recent architectural movements received study. The ordinance creating the Central West End Certified Historic District passed in 1979, at which time buildings less than 50 years old were considered non-contributing. The Optimist Pavilion was only 18 years old at that time, and the significance of the mid-century modern architectural movement in the United States and in St. Louis had not yet been evaluated. In 2013, the Cultural Resources Office completed a survey of over 2,300 mid-century modern properties built between 1945 and 1975. 200 were determined to have architectural distinction and likely to be eligible for the National Register as city landmarks. These received intensive study, and 50 were determined to be highly significant. At a public meeting with architects, other design professionals, and interested citizens, participants were asked to vote on the 50 most significant. The final result identified 25 highly significant properties. The Optimist Pavilion was one. Condition of the building. Both buildings are in good condition with no evidence submitted as to structural issues. The presence in the historic district in terms of visibility, the site is at the corner of Lindell and Taylor, one of the most prominent locations in the Central West End. The immediate setting, the building is on a street composed of a mixture of architecturally significant buildings from the turn of the 20th century and many examples of mid-century modern that were in the survey's highest category: the Chancery, the AAA building, the Engineers Club, and a number of high-rise residential buildings. Impact of the building's removal on the urban fabric. The demolition of the Optimus site would greatly alter the existing character of the block and site, and construction proposed to replace. Please refer to the proposed construction below. We then evaluated the application based on the standards set forth in the Preservation Review District. The first one, that is Ordinance 64832 and 64689. Item A is redevelopment plan. There is not a city redevelopment plan for the site, so that is not applicable. We then moved on to architectural quality. The Optimist Pavilion is a high merit building per Ordinance 64832 as a building that is individually eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. Demolition of all but the north and west facades would remove any possibility of its eligibility for the National Register. Under the criteria listed above, the building has a unique architectural style, unusual site planning, and is architecturally significant. It was identified as one of the 25 most significant examples of mid-century modern architecture in St. Louis in the 2013 survey by the Cultural Resources Office. Conditions. We determined the buildings are sound per the definition in Ordinance 64832 with no evidence of structural failure or deterioration. Neighborhood effect and reuse potential. The site is located in one of the strongest real estate markets in the city. There are numerous development projects in the area. Reuse potential. Applicant and owner have stated that the property cannot be reused, but no specific information has been submitted to the Cultural Resources Office. Economic hardship. At the time we wrote the report, we did not have a letter from the owner. We have since received a letter that's been sent along to the Preservation Board from the Optimist International Group, and I believe that the applicant will address that when they present. The presence and the visibility in the historic district. The site is at the corner of Lindell and Taylor, one of the most prominent locations in the Central West End. Immediate setting. Oh, I apologize. Urban design. The effect of the proposed partial demolition on attached row buildings is not applicable. The integrity of the existing block face, the Optimist site strongly holds the corner is an important element of the streetscape. It is also one of a number of important mid-century modern designs along Lindell and is adjacent to another significant mid-century building at 111 North Taylor. Proposed demolition with unique or significant character. The pavilion is an important example of mid-century modern design, a two-story stone veneered structure defined by tall slot windows flanked by triangular concrete columns supported by cantilever floor slabs. Proposed subsequent construction. The applicant has demonstrated site control. We don't have evidence of ownership or option, although the applicant has stated that there is an option to purchase the property, and proposed construction would equal or exceed the structure that's there now. The Cultural Resources Office received a revised submission for the Optimist International site on October 28th of 2021. It proposed retaining a small portion of the pavilion and incorporating it into a new design for a 7 to 8 story L-shaped apartment building. To achieve this, the applicant suggests demolition of all but the front north and one side facade on the west. Most exterior elements of these facades, the narrow slot windows, triangular columns, and exterior cantilevered floor slabs would be retained. However, on the North Taylor facade, below the cantilever, the windows would be widened slightly to accommodate the installation of entry doors to new apartment units. These are slides that have been submitted by the applicant, and they are going to go over these in a lot more detail in their presentation. Setting aside the critical loss of historic building fabric, which has been addressed above, the design of the proposed building is generally appropriate in scale, exterior materials, and detailing with other buildings in this section of Lindell Boulevard. It should be noted that the design team has met with the Cultural Resources Office and taken several of their suggestions, resulting in a design that is more compatible with the pavilion than first proposed. The Northeast Tower is particularly handsome, sheathed with stone similar to that of the pavilion and with narrow vertical openings that reflect the pavilion's character-defining slot windows. However, the new design fails in that the historic pavilion would no longer be perceived as a distinct building, but instead subsumed by the apartment tower. When planning additions to historic properties, the original resource itself should always be perceivable, and the new construction should not visually overwhelm the original. Because of the great difference in scale between the pavilion and the apartments, this would be difficult to completely achieve in any design. However, in the front facade of the current proposal, the pavilion's prominent projecting eaves are extended to be incorporated as a belt course over a glazed portion of the front tower, and it is difficult to detect where the pavilion ends and the new building begins. It would be an improvement if the pavilion's west pavilion, or at least the projecting eaves, returned to reasonable distance to provide the effect of a separate and intact structure. Similarly, on the North Taylor facade, while the pavilion's eaves here do return a small distance, the effect is countered by a third floor extension over the pavilion's roof. Proposed construction as far as architectural compatibility. The context is varied. The proposed building would have to the east Jackson Arms, a 13-story building constructed in 1964 and a mid-century modern design, and to the west across Taylor, the Archbishop's residence, a 2.5-story stone building from 1922. There are a number of high-rise residential towers along this portion of Lindell, and these are some context slides to give you an idea of exactly where this is. There is no issue about commonly controlled property or accessory structures. Moving on to relevant legislation. This is from Ordinance 69423 for the Central West End as far as revised rehabilitation and new construction standards. They get very specific about new construction or additions to existing residential or institutional buildings under the category of height, scale, and mass. A new low-rise building, including all appurtenances, must be constructed with the 15% of the average height of existing low-rise buildings that form the block face. Floor levels, water tables, and foundations shall appear to be at the same level. When one roof shape is employed at the prominence of existing buildings in the streetscape, any proposed new construction or alteration shall follow the same roof design. A new high-rise building may be located either on a block face with existing high-rise structures or on a corner site. A new high-rise building may exceed the average height of existing structures on the relevant block face. Our analysis says that the proposed building appears to fall under the high-rise category. It appears to comply with the height requirement. The streetscape along Lindell is a mix of 19th century, mid-century, and more recent structures. The proposed L-shaped tower would not adversely affect the neighboring buildings. Location. There's no issue that we found with location. Under exterior materials, that appears to comply. The exterior materials on the pavilion would be retained, and proposed materials for the L-shaped tower, brick, stone, and siding with some metal trim comply. Fenestration appears to comply. Curb cuts and driveways, this is a site plan taken from the applicant's submission. There is one curb cut here at this location, and it appears to line up with an existing curb cut, but we would not be the final arbiters of that. Coordination with form-based zoning, a formal review of the project and the Central West End form-based zoning standards has not been conducted. So preliminary findings and conclusions. The Cultural Resources Office consideration of the criteria for demolition in the Central West End Historic District and in the Preservation Review District Ordinance, as well as the requirements for new construction in the Central West End Historic District, led to these preliminary findings. 4490 Lindell and 4494 Lindell are located in the Central West End Historic District. Both buildings were erected by the Optimist International Organization. The corner pavilion was designed by Harry Van Hofen of the Schwartz and Van Hofen firm and was completed in 1962. The east building, also designed by Van Hofen, was completed in 1978. The pavilion was identified as of high architectural significance in the recent survey of mid-century modern architecture in St. Louis. And based on that survey, it is considered to be eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. Its near total demolition would be a significant architectural loss, and the raising of all but two of its facades would render it ineligible for listing on the National Register. 1978 Tower Building, while at an age of slightly less than 50 years, is part of history as the Optimus site, and as such would be eligible for the National Register as part of a district or thematic nomination. However, it does not have the exceptional architectural significance of the pavilion, and its demolition would have much less impact upon the district, the street, and the architectural history of the city. The Central West End Historic District standards acknowledge that buildings such as the Optimist will attain significance as the years pass, and therefore may be considered contributing structures to the district. The applicant has not submitted an analysis of the condition of the buildings nor the feasibility of their reuse. Based on these preliminary findings, the Cultural Resources Office recommends that the Preservation Board withhold preliminary approval to the project and recommend the applicants explore the possibility of reuse of the pavilion building in their future development.
Okay, commissioners, questions for Meg? Okay, Meg, would you issue your instructions to people who wish to testify again, please?
Yes, should we let the applicant present?
I'm warning people now so that they have a few minutes to do it.
Yes, of course. If you do wish to speak on this or any agenda item, please put your full name and the agenda item into the chat. Comments that are posted to the chat don't count. So we want you to actually speak. And if you do that, we will be sure to call on you when we get to the public comment section of this matter.
Thank you, Meg. Okay, is the applicant present?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay,
Proceed. Did you bring people with you?
I did. Let me mention their names. The
you
chat
can
is
present.
disabled for me. I'm not sure if it's working for others, but there are a couple people that are here with us as the applicant to present. One is Eli Hosington of HOK, and he would present the architectural review. There's Adam from Berkel, and Adam's the engineer on the project. He's the PE as well as the structural, providing structural engineering for all of the shoring. And so he's also on here and he's provided some documents. And then finally, the Cheryl, who's the chairman of the Optimist International board, is here as well. And she's the owner of the property.
Okay, make your presentation in the order that you want and call your own people.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Wanted to present a little bit of a background. So if you go to the next slide, whoever is advancing.
I'll be advancing the slides, and it's not in a PowerPoint form because that's how we received it from the applicant. So apologies if there's a little bit of disconnect.
Do you have the PDF file?
Yes. Sorry, I thought this was what you submitted.
I believe this is a different file, but I can talk to it if you don't have it.
Hold on one second. All right, hold on.
Sure.
This is what we have. So,
Let me go ahead and start. And if you find it, please share it. So I wanted to give a little bit of history and perspective where we started. And so we started this about a year ago, and we presented the first version, which was a full tear down of the building, and we replaced it with a U-shaped building. And in some ways, I think the key message is that we heard from both the neighborhood as well as from Cultural Resources and the Preservation Board that we needed to make some significant changes in order to get everybody's approval on the project. So the first thing that we did is we went back and interviewed a few new architects. And through that process, came upon HOK and Eli Hoisington in specific, who really had a good vision for balancing some of the objectives that we had in constructing the new building, and then balancing that with an adaptive reuse model. I'd like to have Eli present that in detail, but I want you to know that a significant amount of time, on the order of 6 months or so, was spent with Eli meeting with neighborhood groups, meeting with the CRO and staff, and getting to a model that made sense, would hit our program, would allow us to have the right amount of parking within the building, would allow us to have the right amount of units, would maintain the height that would allow us to economically develop the program, and then also retain the facade and the most significant elevations of the building. Throughout that process, we enlisted the support of engineers, Burkle being the main one that would be involved with all the shoring, both the shoring of the interior as well as the exterior of the building, as we do the demo, as well as we do the parking and construction and excavation and shoring of the building as we develop the parking. The current owner has not had a chance to sell the property successfully for the last 10 years. They have listed it since approximately 2013, and they've had significant hardship because of the inability to sell and focus their business on helping kids, which is their primary focus. They will talk to you about the fact that it's a significant burden to maintain the building, and also the building is in distress. There is some significant damage to the structure of the garage, and there's continuous flooding in the basement of the building, both of which would require more significant updates and upkeep. The next few presentations are very important, but I would like to also say that through the process, Eli spent quite a bit of time working with the neighborhood group and Mr. Jim Zweier and fellow board members of his group to come to a proposal that made sense. And they have provided a variety of points of feedback. I wanted to address one area of feedback that they had provided. They had provided 4 points that they felt were necessary conditions that we meet as an ownership group in developing the property. The first was that they wanted a final review and approval by CRO of the sealed drawings and specifications to include details such as windows, doors, building materials. And of course, we will comply with that, and that will be through the building permit process, and all the other processes would allow CRO to do that. 2, strict adherence by the developer and contractors and suppliers to details of final approval plans and specifications. We will have 2 construction administration teams on the job. One, we are enlisting the help of a historic consultant that we've used on other projects. The historic consultant is Elizabeth Rosen and her team, and they have helped on many state and federal historic projects and make sure that the compliance of those projects is in line with what is required to meet state and federal historic tax credit objectives. This project would not be a historic tax credit project, but nevertheless, their construction administration will really help to make sure that the details are adhered to. We would also have HOK providing construction administration throughout the process in order to make sure that we are working towards with compliance against the original documentation. And the third point they made is periodic site inspection throughout the construction process by a qualified independent consultant who they could pick, and we're fine with that as well. We hope to do enough CA that it is not even needed, but you can also put another construction administration or review on that process on a periodic basis, and we're happy to deal with that. Finally, and this is probably the most unique aspect, but as a team, we talked about it internally, and we felt that this was an important point that they had probably considered in detail and felt that it was very important in order to make sure that the process unfolds without any surprises. Number 4 was providing a surety bond in the amount of $1 million as liquidated damages in the event efforts to preserve the 2 existing walls intact throughout construction prove unsuccessful, and or unauthorized substitutions for approved details or materials are made. And we are willing to comply with that. We're in fact willing to raise that to $2 million of a surety bond. And why are we willing to do that? One, because we think it's very important to make sure that the building is developed in line with the preserving these 2 facades. We also note that extreme care must be given. Although these are plans and these are schematic plans, and we will develop these, and HOK will develop these into construction drawings, there will be things that you will find in the field. There will be unknown issues that will come up in the field, and those need to be thoughtfully reviewed and discussed with constituents in order to figure those out. We have done 3 other historic buildings in town, and we have received state and federal tax credits on those buildings. One is Boris Mott building in the Lafayette Square area. The other is a Soulard Ice House. And we've also done some new construction that has historic elements, such as the Steel Yard building in Soulard, which has a lot of historic elements on the facades. This building will probably be the most challenging of them all. And so we think that review and that focus from all suppliers and subcontractors will be very important. So with that said, I'd like to turn it over to Eli. And then after Eli's finished, Adam, and then Cheryl. Okay, thank you.
Proceed.
Thank you, Meg. I appreciate you driving. If you could scroll up the deck, and if you could start at around slide in number 8 on your deck, I think I can pick up from where you left off. I appreciate you dealing with the files here. So thank you, everyone. My name is Eli Whissington with HOK. As Vic and Meg said, it's an interesting project. So I'm going to walk you through some of the details and the thought process behind everything that was so accurately described by both Meg and Vic. This was a slide that Meg had put up, really talking about the approach to the site, and wanted to just start here to talk about what we were thinking about with the project. Key to it, as we looked at it, obviously was not just understanding the building, but then what our opportunities were to put in the program, and that Vic has been talking about. And that program is at about 150 units. And then that, if you look at the need, as he mentioned, in parking, is right about 150 parking stalls. Those are the 2 main drivers when we look at what we did architecturally. So if you can go to slide number 10, please. So here's just a little bit of an overlay of what's going on. As was pointed out, we were also looking to respect some of the setbacks and entry points, the curb cut, particularly there on Lindell, really maintaining all those aspects, knowing that, and just to not to shy away from it, we were going to be proposing, as Vic says, more of a reuse and not a restoration here. So what we've done is we've maintained those things, maintained the historic entry, looked at providing a service entry that was more discrete off of Taylor. And really what we've done is we've tried to, with the new 150 unit residential tower, essentially wrap the existing, the footprint of the existing building. If you can go to slide number 11, please, the next slide. And this is one of the keys to the issue. We looked at any number of iterations of this, and we had 2 main ideas with this piece of the program, the parking. Obviously, we did not want to be looking at any proposal that would have parking above grade. It would take away from the street character, the liveliness of the street, the opportunity for activation. That is an important part of, I think, what we would do in any development. So we have 2 levels of below grade parking that is about as tight as we can get it. If you look just to the side of the elevators, you'll see a speed ramp that is allowing us to get up and out to the existing curb cut, and that stacks as you look at the two parking levels, 1 and 2. This is actually lower level 2 plan. There's a similar plan above. I would point out that one of our challenges when we look at the existing pavilion is even in the narrowest parking arrangement we could make, which would result in a much smaller development, would be roughly the first 2 bays moving from right on your screen to left. That equates to just over about 100 feet. That would be about as narrow as we could get. That would still put parking about halfway through the existing pavilion. So we certainly looked at options to get the parking count to a higher level to meet the program, trying to work within the L footprint. And as I think this drawing shows, it's really very difficult, if not impossible, to do with this program. If you could go to slide 13. So what that results in is we go up the building. You can see the parking access then driving underneath it, with the retention of the existing facades, maintaining those edges. Everything that Meg commented on from the exterior was important in terms of the architecture. And then what we've gone and done on the interior of the project is, as she pointed out, the retention of the facades, but then essentially it's a new construction from there in. That on the ground floor will include some walk-up units along Taylor, which is you see on the left side of the screen at the front entrance, reusing the existing historic front entrance for the lobby of the building, some amenity space as well adjacent to that. And then we actually activate the other sides with ground floor units. And you'll see this consistently as we go up. So I'm not going to hit every floor. I just want to walk through the key points here. I will make a note that if you can see that the structure is fully replaced inside this building as well. If you could go to slide 15, please. As we get up to the 3rd floor, we've maintained the roof elevation of the existing pavilion, although we rebuild it. And that is to accommodate rooftop amenities, pool, and then the L shape here you can see take form for the rest of the units as we go forward. The next few floor plans are fairly repetitive, so I'm going to skip them and we can move down to, if you can scroll down a little bit, slide number 22, please. And I know there's a section in the submission. I thought that would be particularly helpful. And if you could just maybe, I'm sorry, Meg, if you could scroll down a touch on the screen on the menu on the left, I could see which I'm looking for the building section. I think that would be the most useful presentation tool at 26. Perfect. Thank you so much. So this really tells the story of the project. This is, I think, the takeaway in a nutshell about how this project technically works and from a design perspective. You can really see that essentially our first 4 floors there's 2 floors of basement, which is where all the parking is hidden below grade. The next 2 floors above that, that's the concrete construction. That's going to be how we basically do the engineering and the rebuild that we talked about. So that heavier concrete construction allows us to get in, do the shoring and retain the existing facades and then build something new in between. And then we go with a more traditional framing system above that for the additional 5 floors. So it's a 7-floor building. The 7th floor is tall. It has an additional height in it so that those units are unique. That also helps with the massing. It sort of stair steps down from the adjacent, residential building beside it. So if you go to slide 28, you can see that the ghosted building is the existing, the building just to our east. And so you can see how the massing was stair stepping down. And that was part of our efforts to really mitigate some of the massing concerns that we had heard about. I think that Meg appropriately pointed out in her review. Certainly some of the comments about the architectural details, some of the cornices and returns. I know that there was some discussion about wanting to study whether or not we would look at using the curb cut as existing or having it off the alley. Those would be natural next steps for us as we looked at hearing other comments from this board and from the community. But you get the sense of the whole project in this slide. If you could go to slide 30, please. I'm going to probably wrap up just for the sake of my voice. The lighting we would look we did this intentionally to talk about lighting, would be sort of quiet for the residential piece, but we would look to actually use lighting to accentuate the existing facades to really help reference those and talk about the historic past. So I think that really sums it up. From an architectural perspective, there was a lot of effort to really get, as Vic said, a balancing act between the 2 different forces we were presented with. So look forward to your comments. Vic, I think we should maybe pass to the engineer at this point. Thank you.
Chairman, is the architect taking questions?
Let's let them finish their presentation and come back and get them. Is that okay?
Yes, sir, of course.
Well, hello, my name is Adam Hurley. I work for Burkle and Company Contractors, and in some ways, my role in the project is much simpler than Eli's. My task has been, is it possible to preserve this facade? And if so, what kind of way is there to go about it? And Meg, I think that probably the best place to start is a couple slides down with some pictures, because that's usually a little bit easier to describe what we're thinking. So our task as we're engaged right now is simply to come up with a preliminary plan on ways to preserve the facade of the building and execute a 2-story underground excavation. So this is really just a kind of a step-by-step process on how we would go about supporting this facade. And really this step 1 kind of outlines the mounting of a continuous steel member on the inside of the building below the roof line. And keep in mind, all of this facade support is temporary in nature, and it's just to facilitate the construction of the rest of the project. And once the facade is tied into the new construction, all of this temporary facade support is removed. So in this first step, there's a beam mounted on the inside of the building. And if you would move to the next slide, please, Meg. We next add steel members on the outside of the building across the masonry and pass bolts, if you will, is to simplify it, through the window openings to kind of sandwich the walls together so that we can get a good grab on this. And the idea is we're replacing the support that the roof currently offers to keep the walls up. And if you would move to the next slide, please. Once we've got kind of this sandwich of steel to hold the top of the structure, we install steel beams or braces that would kind of kick down to the existing grade level. And there would be some sort of support here, whether it's a pile drilled into the ground or something to hold it in place down at this grade level. So what this does is this support system will hold the building walls up that will allow for demolition of the roof and the interior floor slabs and basically the removal of the insides of the building. And the next slide, if you would please, Meg, is simply just a very simple cross section. It's not specific to this particular building. It just indicates a typical method of vertical shoring to support earth. In this case, you could picture the facade on the top of wall section above. So the first step would be to support the historic facade. And the second phase would be to put in a structural support system to support the 2 levels of subgrade parking. I'm not sure what else we've got in store for me. I see some pictures of our brochure. So a little bit about Burkle. We are an employee-owned company that was started in 1959. We've been in the geotechnical construction business for, coming on 60 years. And, this is my everyday. This is what I do. We do a number of facade supports in any given year. Each one is unique. All of these structures are historically significant. Some are more complex than others. They're all equally important. I've been in this business for about 20 years, and this is my comfort zone. And that's all I really have to share. Thank you.
Okay, questions for the applicants from the commissioners?
Well, I guess my question is fairly technical. The head of cultural resources stated that it just seems like this is a facadism solution to the problem. Was there any chance of saving more of the building than you guys are proposing to save while still putting all that parking underneath and doing everything you wanted to do? I'm sure you guys looked at this every which way.
We did, and maybe I can respond to that if that's okay. I would say with this program, in terms of the parking, number of units, number of stalls, this was about as aggressive as we could get. In terms of leaving what was there, where if you look at it, I'll give you a technical answer to a technical question. We're using speed ramps, we're using 45 one-way parking structures. We're really holding at that -2 levels because of that being about as far down as we feel comfortable going with retaining these facades and the shoring we need to do. When you look at it that way as a three-dimensional puzzle, we sort of did the minimum we could in terms of parking and in terms of width and access. And the result was really that we could keep those facades, and it's really 2 walls, right? It's the outer columns plus the inner wall that we're keeping. I don't think without a significant programmatic change, we could have done any better. We did look at a few different situations. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioners, further questions for the architect or the engineer?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Hurley, the engineer. You mentioned that this sort of operations, your comfort zone, you've worked on other historic properties. I'm not sure if you move past some slides that show us other projects of historic buildings that you've successfully achieved this result on, but if not, could you name 1 or 2 of those projects?
Sure. We just completed historic facade support in Washington, D.C. The name of that project is the Arlo D.C. Hotel. We completed one last year in Aspen, Colorado. The name of that project was 300 East Hyman. We completed another project in Washington, D.C. called Phillips Collection, also a facade support. Another one in Maryland, I believe, called 1701 14th Street.
Wait, let me interrupt you just 1 second.
Sure.
Tim's iPhone, would you mind muting yourself? We're getting feedback. Thank you. Proceed.
Those are a few that come to mind.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's an unusual specialty, so I'm curious.
Yeah, it's a component of what we do. We are often involved in complex structural support scenarios, and facade support is just a part of those unusual conditions we're asked to get involved in.
Further questions for the architect or the engineer? Okay, I noticed the building owner is here and it indicated a wish to speak. Ms. Bren?
Thank you so much. My name is Cheryl Bren, and I am the new executive director at Optimist International. I relocated to St. Louis last year for this organization in an attempt to preserve an historic organization that's been around for over 103 years. And like many membership organizations, we have faced some challenges, and COVID has not been kind to organizations like ours. However, we are very committed to trying to maintain our organization for generations to come. So this building, and I have shared some of this with the Preservation Board, this building and our organization is a mere fraction of really what it used to be. So as you can imagine, with a building this size, we used to house over 80 staff members. And we're at 27% of that today. So this is certainly much larger and so much more property than we need. And if we think about the resources that it would take to kind of bring it and modernize it in a way that could be subdivided or used in different ways, it actually would use all of our resources and actually probably put us out of business. I know it may look structurally sound. I'm a little concerned when we think about the chunks of the parking garage that are falling, or even on the 14th of June, when we had that first initial heat wave, our air conditioner quit. So there's all kinds of things with this building that are hindering our ability to actually meet our mission as an organization. And we need to be focused on our mission, which is certainly helping kids. And to think about us really looking at this building and trying to stay with this. I would love to stay in St. Louis. And we have consolidated our team into the St. Louis building to try to stay there and to try to save this organization. But this is the fourth attempt, as I understand, to redevelop this. And looking at some historical information about this process and learning about this, have discovered that they've had a couple of developers who have really invested time and effort into thinking how they could use this building and reinvent it. And they both come up with options that aren't workable or aren't feasible because it's so expensive. So I'm hoping that the Preservation Board will consider this and considering allowing us as an organization to continue to exist as well, however, just in a new location. So we can continue to do our work and supporting the kids of St. Louis and all over the country. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today.
Commissioners, anybody have questions for Ms. Brand? Okay, does the applicant have anything else to present? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Meg, who is signed up to speak?
We have Brian Macklin first.
How many speakers do we have?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, looks like 6 or 7. Some of them have already spoken. So
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Let's proceed.
Hello. Can you guys hear me? Hello.
Yes. Yes.
I am a former resident of St. Louis, Missouri. I now live in Seattle, Washington. I think that it's pretty awesome that you're saving these buildings, or at least attempting to save them. And there's similar things going on here in Seattle where buildings are really awesome old buildings are just being wiped out for the sake of more condos, which is really sad. But at least you guys are attempting to do something along those lines. As I said in my brief little chat statement, I was invited here by Asia Corrigan of the St. Louis Preservation Crew, and we were potentially hoping to speak with someone about Washington Park Cemetery. So I'm not sure if we're something that you want to put us on the schedule later on down the road or something along those lines.
I don't have an answer to that because I don't know what our jurisdiction for the Washington Park Cemetery would be.
We'll be happy to speak with you, Mr. Macklin, maybe perhaps tomorrow about anything you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, that would be great. I do know from recent information that I've heard that recent information that I was gleaned was that the airport is controlled by the city of St. Louis, which I didn't know that at the time. So I think that has some bearing upon what's going on there at the cemetery. But again, that's completely different from what you guys are talking about today. So I understand if this is not part of the scheduled talk for today.
Thank you. Meg, who's next?
Next is Jake Banton.
Hi there. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jake Banton. I'm an architect. I live in the West End neighborhood of the city. I'm not associated with project or this project team at all, but I also do sit on the city's planning commission. Just wanted to give a comment that I think this is an interesting and cool and great project. I think it's a big improvement from the previous iteration that proposed a complete demolition of the building. And I'd like to make two quick points. One, couple of things recently from my travels that I think would be important to share. I recently got back from a trip from Europe, and I think there are many examples that I saw there in the continuing evolution of those historic cities, where their need for new buildings, new spaces, yet being old cities that have great historic structures, really many times the only option is for a type of facadism. And I would argue that facadism is a type of preservation, not necessarily maybe the most optimal type of preservation, but I think it should be considered a type of preservation. And in a city that is continually evolving, continually needing new housing, new needs, that facadism is a type of preservation that should be seriously considered in some of these unique situations with these buildings. Second point I'd like to make is that recently got back from the Architecture's National Conference in Chicago, and there was a conversation with President Obama about the need for more housing in our neighborhoods. And a lot of time there in these neighborhoods like the Central West End in St. Louis, it's hard to find sites. And oftentimes there's many obstacles to the few sites that are available to providing new housing. So coming up with creative solutions, and I think this is one of them, to add housing and density in places that are desirable to live is important. And I think this would be an important step in our own towns and our own cities' evolution as our city and our Central West End neighborhood continue to grow, of adaptive reuses of these old buildings that that could provide that new housing in one of St. Louis's prime neighborhoods. So I would consider this project to be a prime contender of that. I applaud the city staff for their thorough investigation. As a member of the Planning Commission, I know all the hard work that you guys do in researching the proposals and responding to them. Also applaud the developer for listening to the community and coming back with what I think is a creative solution. So I would urge the Preservation Board to approve this project. I think it's a great project. Thank you.
Before we go to the next speaker, I noticed that there are at least 3 people in the room that have their hands raised. Again, if you'd like to speak on an agenda item, please put your name, your full name, and the agenda item in the chat, and we will call on you. Next on our list is Alderwoman Tina Peel.
The chat is disabled.
Just for everyone's information, we have made it so that only the host can see the chat. We've had some disruptions in the chat, but everyone should be able to hear me. So if Alderwoman Peel is still in the room, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. So I am here in terms of talking about the demolition. I believe that is the question regarding this particular project, the Optimist Club. Does the 2 walls demoing it constitute demolition, and does it preserve the historic preservation of the building? And since it is a demolition, and in the prior preliminary review, the preservation denied demolition, I believe that we should make sure that this building stays whole. Taking down these 2 walls, I agree with the CRO, who also stated that this will lose the historic value of the building. If it passes by the Preservation Board, the demo of these 2 walls, this is going to set a precedent in the city in terms of losing the value of historic buildings. And I think that is really important in terms of looking at how precedences are set. And I know that there are other interested parties in redeveloping the Optimist Club as is. However, at this point in time, Lex Living has the priority in terms of trying to build there. So I believe that this property is also, as some of the people who have spoken have said, this is a strong residential market, has prominent properties. I agree in terms of creating housing in the Central West End. There's a lot of housing also created in the Central West End at this point in time. And, I believe that, one of the things in terms of the housing, most of the housing that is being built here that I've reviewed is luxury housing. And so there's not varied housing. And I think that is very important. So I would like to have the Preservation Board look at really how the Optimist Club is historic as an entire building, and would like that the board votes that this is considered a demolition. So thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Andrew Weil.
Hello, can you all hear me, see me?
I can hear you. I can see
You can
you.
hear me? You can see me. Okay, I can't see me, but
Is that your thumb? Yes.
oh, okay. Well, as long as I'm part of the conversation, I would like to echo Alderwoman Peel's comments and concerns about precedent. I should say that this is not a consensus position from my board. There is certainly some dissent about this position on my board, but my position as a preservation professional are focused on the facts of the case. My understanding of the current proposal is that this constitutes a demolition of a high merit building. While Landmarks Association is open to compromise with regard to the need to adapt historic properties for new uses, and we support the addition of density to our urban fabric when appropriate, there are some buildings that require a more delicate approach. The Optimist building is one such resource. As the staff analysis correctly asserts, the Optimist International Pavilion is a high merit building. This is a category of building that is specifically identified as being worthy of the highest level of protection by multiple applicable ordinances. I have 20 years of experience working in the field of cultural resource management and architectural history. And I concur that the Cultural Resources Office is correct in asserting that this proposal constitutes a demolition of a high merit building, that the proposal would compromise the integrity of a high merit design. And despite the engineering assurances, which are laudable and which I hadn't heard before, that previously I had been concerned that the excavation could end up destabilizing the facades that were, purportedly intended to be preserved. As noted by staff, the building was identified by a study that was conducted at substantial public cost as one of the most 25 significant modernist designs in the city of St. Louis. I think that the staff has done an excellent job of providing the Preservation Board with an analysis of applicable ordinances, and these ordinances are designed to protect the character and economic value of our community's cultural heritage. These ordinances are very clear with regard to the disposition of high merit buildings in the Central West End. High merit buildings are to be preserved. So I endorse the positions articulated by the Cultural Resources Office in the staff analysis, and the position of Alderwoman Peel. And I know that the Preservation Board will uphold the letter and spirit of the applicable ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. Meg?
Yes, the last person we have on our list is Jim Dwyer, but I noticed that Brian, Madeline Garcia, Chris Stritzel, Tim Zeifa, and Mike Haney have their hands raised, and I'm not sure if there's a problem with the chat. We haven't gotten any new chats in a while, so if there is an issue. We don't want to leave off anyone who has.
Yes,
Yeah, the chat is disabled.
I'm not able to enter my name in the chat. It says the chat is disabled.
Okay.
I'll try again.
We just had someone, Brian, put his name in the chat, so the chat may be enabled again. No idea what happened. We did not do anything different, but now we have Mike Haney in here. Okay. And these are all for the Optimist Club, I'm assuming. So Jim Dwyer's next, and then we'll do Brian Tate and Mike Haney and John Warren and Greg Laudick. And John Gunther. Okay, they're all coming in the chat now.
So Jim Dwyer is next.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Chairman, originally, before the testimony that we've heard so far today, it was my intention to read into the record two documents, the first of which was created in April of this year, when it was first thought that this matter was going to be heard by the Preservation Board. And then the second bears today's date, and that was intended as an addendum to the content of the April 27th memo. But given the testimony of Mr. Alston, in which he acknowledged that he is willing to abide by the four conditions that we proposed in the April document, I'm going to skip that in the interest of time and focus on what was intended as an addendum to that document, the April 27th document being of record in any event, I believe. Isn't that true?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you. So I will just, we'll save a few minutes and I will focus on a document dated today, June 27th, 2022, addressed to the Preservation Board regarding the subject property entitled Addendum to Memorandum of April 27th, 2022. Chairman Callow and members of the board, lest there be any misinterpretation or ambiguity regarding the CWE Planning and Development Committee Memorandum of April 27th, 2022, it is essential to recognize that the recommendation expressed therein was not intended to be interpreted as a ringing endorsement of the proposed project. Rather, it represented a compromise proposal tinged with unresolved concerns and ongoing skepticism. Those reservations should not be discounted or minimized. And at that point, it's important to know that we had not heard any response to the four conditions that we proposed, despite the fact that we shared our April memo with the listing agent for the property. We had not gotten any feedback, so we were unaware that Mr. Alston would be acknowledging and embracing those recommendations earlier today. So I proceed. That highly qualified expression of support was based largely on the introduction of HOK to the development team and the resulting marked improvement between the initial design proposal presented in 2021 and the current proposal, which, subject to important design clarifications and refinements yet to be adopted, represents a significant advance toward a suitable reuse of this prominent site. The committee acknowledges and agrees with CRO that the extent of demolition proposed in the present plan violates and is prohibited by the CWE Historic District Standards, which enjoy the force of law, Ordinance number 69421. We also acknowledge our role as advocates for strict adherence to those standards. In this instance, a complex set of critical factors presents unique challenges which the committee has endeavored to respond to in a constructive manner. We are aware of the risks that our recommendations in this matter may be cited by others as precedent for similar relief in unrelated projects. We emphasize that that is not our intent and that we are responding solely to the singular circumstances and challenges unique to this property. In addition to the four conditions to approval proposed in our April 27th correspondence, we further propose that resolution of and enforceable agreement to those and the following matters be a precondition to approval, and that preliminary approval be withheld unless and until such binding agreement is presented. Point 1, that design refinements to the front elevation of the proposed new building, specifically at the intersection of the new construction and the existing building, intended to further distinguish new from old and to preserve intact the short section of the east elevation that is currently exposed to view. The objective is that the existing high merit building continue to be perceived as a distinct structure as is required by the standards. 2, clarification of intent regarding preservation of the existing terrace and distinctive stone retaining wall on the north and west sides of the property, and more detailed information regarding the design of the 6 entries proposed along the west elevation and their impact on the architectural integrity of that facade. 3, in addition to a surety bond, as recommended in the April 27th memo and doubled by Mr. Alston earlier today, that financing commitments and a construction completion bond be provided as a condition to the issuance of any demolition or construction permits for the project. And finally, 4, that a binding agreement in recordable form be entered into prohibiting short-term rental of any dwelling unit in the project. That completes our testimony, and thank you once again for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Meg?
Next is Brian Take. Brian Take, are you still in the room?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, one second. I don't know if my camera's. My camera on? I think it.
We can see you.
Okay. So I live at 70 Waterman. I appreciate everyone's time here today. I've spoken at a number of different events lately, and I'm here to give a unique perspective to anyone who cares to listen. One thing that I've noticed and I appreciate is the new development that's taken place around our property. It's created a place that a younger generation wants to live, that's exciting, and that people really seem to gravitate towards and have strong opinions for. What I also want to point out is that I don't know if anyone's familiar with Straub's Market on Kings Highway. And since the COVID pandemic and the death of the nightlife on Maryland, crime has gone up at Straub's significantly. They've started staffing that regularly with not just 1, but 2 security guards. Just a few weeks ago, after the death of more of our restaurants and businesses in the Central West End, they had to install gates over all of their liquor cabinets. So now you have to go and get a key from somebody to grab a bottle of something. Over the weekend, they had a complete break-in. Several gentlemen.
Brian, can I refocus you on this project?
Yes. So to me, the point is I understand that the developer is willing to work with within the form-based code to provide a building that will meet the needs of the city and the intended tenants, but that it seems like we're very hung up on the facade of the building, the maintenance or keeping a building that the current owner does not want to maintain, cannot afford to maintain. The building's been shopped for the last 4 years, and the very capable brokers that were selling that were unable to find any other purchaser for the building. And I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents, because I live and deal with the effect of these decisions every day. And, I appreciate you listening to me.
Thank you. Meg?
Next is Mike Heaney.
Hi, all. Thanks very much for the meeting and for everyone's work. I'll be very brief. I just wanted to say I was very strongly in support of the proposal. I really respected and I appreciated all the comments that Jim Dwyer had. I think everybody realizes it's not a perfect solution. I've lived here 10 years. I've seen people try to redevelop the site for 10 years to no avail. And I know that the preservation doesn't work in yearly cycles, but it's been a long time and we would really look forward to the development. So I would let other folks chat, but that was just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Meg?
John Warren.
Hi there. Hi, John Warren. I work with Cushman & Wakefield. I obviously represent the Optimist Club. So I'm just going to be short here. This is, like Cheryl mentioned, their 4th attempt. The building has been on the market for almost a decade, on and off the market for years. Cheryl wanted me to mention too that they actually recently had a break-in at the property. They continue to have foundational issues. Really, the only types of calls I get for this building are really either for not-for-profits to take the building as is or church groups. I certainly think this is one of the final best sites of redevelopment opportunity in the Central West End. Obviously, there's the Ventas Healthcare site at Kindred Hospital and Copler's Surface Lot. And those are already spoken for. Kindred has no interest in selling their surface lot at all. So there are few remaining sites that are able to be developed in the heart of the Central West End. I would argue the Central West End is one of the region's premier multifamily districts. And I would like to continue to see housing options. And when you add housing options to a district, that helps to compress rental rates across the whole submarket. So by not allowing new additions to areas, kind of like we've seen in New York and San Francisco, those rental rates continue to rise. And I'd further like to point out cities like, while we see a lot of development across the region, Kansas City has about 42,000 multifamily developments underway, planning, or in construction stages. Nashville has 80,000 units, 80,000 for a city that has 800,000 fewer people. St. Louis only has about 19,000 and change throughout the entire metro area. So I would continue to like to see St. Louis grow and thrive. I think this project is ideal. It preserves overall. I know that's somehow become a pejorative term to call it facadism, but it does, keep the existing facade. It looks like the building's overall preserved. It does add 150 units. More people or more eyes on the street. That's more safety for the Central West End area. And overall, I think it's a great solution. I do think this developer really worked a lot with the Central West End Planning and Development Committee, Jim Dwyer's group, to come up with solutions as much as possible and heard their objections and questions. So I do think the developer does want to work with the neighborhood, design a really cool HOK design project, which mirrors the HOK design building across the street at the Lindell Terrace property, and would be overall a great addition to a really premier corner at Taylor and Lindell. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to read the people that we have on our list so far, are remaining: Greg Loddick, Tim Graham, John Gunther, Carlos Goldberg King, Brian Hadley, and Madeline Garcia. And that's all that we have so far.
Anybody else?
Should Greg Loddick proceed?
Yes, Greg Loddick.
Okay. Well, thanks for taking the time to hear from me. I live at Maryland and Taylor, so directly really across the street from this building. I look out at this every day from my condo. I'd like to thank Lux Living for putting forward this recommendation. I think it's done a great job of trying to keep the historic nature of the building while helping to, quite frankly, alleviate an issue for Optimus International, which is an inability to maintain the building. And as a property owner in the neighborhood, I'm quite concerned if this doesn't proceed, because this project has been underway for at least a year.
They've been trying to sell the building for a decade, as we just heard. And I'm very concerned that this could be the last chance for a redevelopment, putting the building in the hands of someone that can maintain it, someone that can preserve the historical legacy, as well as help drive the future economic development of the neighborhood. So I support the project and hope that the board will as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg.
Next is Tim Graham.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. I am longtime neighbor of this property. I was in the West Pine West Pine Terrace condos right behind it for 5 years. And then we moved on the other, just a couple blocks north on the other side of the Optimist for the last 10 years. But we kept our condo and we leased it for the last 10 years. And I will say, as someone else just mentioned, because of the new units coming to the neighborhood, we never raised our rent once because we had to keep it where it was for the condo, just because the more units helps keep rents down. But more importantly, I want to see this property developed. I think this is a beautiful compromise and blend of keeping the historic nature of it while adding critical new residents and investment in the neighborhood and in the city in general. We're losing thousands of residents every year. I mean, we have to look at the big picture here and look at the economic longevity of this city. And we have to build where people want to live. And I'm tired of driving by this building in its present state. And I would love to see another, couple hundred new residents, activating the street, adding to the tax base and people shopping and spending in the restaurants. On top of it just being, this is a walkable neighborhood where people don't have to drive everywhere. And if we really care about climate change, as our exurbs, in the suburbs build like crazy and spread out this region, we need to invest in the core. And I feel like after 10 years of efforts with this, to echo what some of the other people, I think this is going to be like the last effort, and where this property is going to sit like this for another 20, 30 years. So anyways, I also have talked to about probably 75 of my neighbors, because I've been very passionate supporter of this project for a while now. And I kid you not, I have not met one person who opposes the redevelopment of this. I'm not exaggerating on the amount of people I've talked to. And as you know, you take a group of 10 people and no one's going to agree on anything. And I've just never seen such unanimous support for any topic I've talked to my neighbors about. So I hope this compromise is supported and this project can move forward. So thank you so much for all the due diligence too and the hard work for everyone involved with this.
Thank you, Meg.
Okay, we have a few more people, so I'll read the list of the next speakers. We have John Gunther next, then Carlos Goldberg King, Brian Hadley, Madeline Garcia, Chris Stritzel, Chico Weber, and Matt Bowman.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I'll be very brief as well. I'm John Gunther. I'm an architect, and also I serve as president of the Society of Architectural Historians and have taught on mid-century modernism at Washington University. And I would just like to echo the comments of Andrew Weil and Alderwoman Peel. This is an important precedent-setting decision. It is a demolition request, and I want to let you know the support that we have for the Cultural Resource Office and your outstanding report and research on this. You hit it right on the nail on the head. So please hold fast to that, and let's try to see this work together to resolve these issues. I will say that a year ago, I went to a meeting where the project was presented, and it was presented as a teardown, as has been stated. And I asked a very simple question. I said, has your architect taken a look at what the building capacity is in its current state? Just as a beginning point of view, what can the building handle in terms of your program requirements? A very simple first step. It sounds like, from what I've heard in the report and from Cultural Resource Office tonight, that question has yet to be answered. And I would ask that we continue to ask that question of what can the pavilion be used as, adaptively reused, a very important thing to do. I understand the other taller building to the left, to the east, will be coming down. I understand that. But what does the potential for the pavilion offer as is? what has been described is not inexpensive and not hard and is very hard to do. So that costs money as well. So what can you do with that existing pavilion, and how much of that program can you realize by holding on to that, in addition to the proposed new residential towers? And climate change was an interesting comment just on the last speaker. I would just add that the embodied energy in these buildings is quite significant. And if we keep tearing all these buildings down, throwing them in the landfills, we are doing harm to the climate as well. So not only are we losing the resources of our culture, but also the physical properties of the materials. Thank you very much. I'll stop with that.
Thank you. Meg?
Next is Carlos Goldberg King.
Hi, my name is Carlos. I am actually just took my last architectural exam this past week, and I wanted to speak about this project. I think for me, I've driven by this building so many times living in St. Louis and growing up as a kid through St. Louis, and always admired the beauty of the building, the colors, just the glazing. This is definitely my type of style of architecture with the long linear lines everywhere. And it's just a beautiful building. And seeing it for sale the last couple years driving by, I've always wondered what could be done with it. And looking at past proposals and currently what Lux Living is proposing, for me, it looks like, you know, the proposal from Lux Living, while it's considered facadism, it really is one of the most unique and best adaptive reuse proposals for this project. While it's keeping the integrity of the look of the exterior of the main Optimist building, it also allows the new buildings to really take shape and take form of the Optimist International Club and look like it was part of what was meant to be and what was there before. I am really in support of this project and would love to see what Lux Living could do with this in terms of redeveloping it, bringing up the community and bringing in more residents to this area. I think it would be great, you know, for contradictions of all the other buildings in the downtown area and in the Central West End, to be able to keep this beautiful historic building and create this luxury residence on the inside, which is something that the Central West End is really lacking right now. It'll provide some better opportunity for perhaps higher end tenants, perhaps from the university or from the hospital areas, to have a really great place to call home within a walking distance of you know, their work and local businesses, and really just re-energize this portion of the neighborhood. So I am in full support of this, and I hope to see that this can move forward and see what Lux Living can do with this project.
Next is Brian Hadley.
Hello, good afternoon all. So I've been following this project for a while. Initially, the first proposal by Lux Living was pretty staunchly against, was very adamantly against that. Reason why is I did not want to see this beautiful piece of mid-century architecture demolished for something that was rather quite generic. Ever since, of course, Lux Living has now done a revision and they listened to feedback. And I will say that now, as it currently stands, I would lend my support to the current proposal, as I do see it as a fit, fair compromise. I do understand what other preservationists in this conversation are saying, that they feel that it is a demolition. But my fear is that with the current proposal, which I agree, echo the sentiments of several others that have spoken now, it seems to be the best option so far that has stepped up to the plate. I do worry about what happens if this is denied and what the future could hold for this building, which is, you know, I would hate to see something like demolition through neglect, or, you know, it just ends up getting demolished just because it simply can't get sold and no one wants to find a higher use for it. So I will say that I do lend my support to the current proposal, and that I just would like to see it move forward. So thank you for your time.
Okay, next is Madeline Garcia.
Hi there, my name is Madeline. I actually currently live in a Lux Living property out in the De Bolivar neighborhood. But with this proposal, I definitely am sad to see such a historic building go. When I first moved to St. Louis, this Optimist Club building was one of the first most notable, buildings I saw driving in the city on Lindell. But I do recognize that kind of with the need to keep this, as an upkeeping project and the finances that go into this, I think it is a very positive type of, in some ways, a renovation, but in other ways, a demolition of this building. I'd like to kind of inquire to the developers, and of course, as they consider these plans going forward, about keeping the historic statue in the front of the building, the Optimist, a torch statue, and potentially including some sort of place marker or a plaque in front of the building to recognize that this is the historic site of Optimist International, and just recognizing the building's former use, even though, of course, the building itself will be mostly demolished. Considering the sustainability aspects, I'd also like to applaud the close walking distance that this building has to Whole Foods and Schnucks grocery store. So I do think it could actually be a car-free living for people and tenants who move into that area. I would also like to advise the developers to make sure that this is a sustainable development, including LED lights where possible, green building materials, and making sure that insulation and the overall design actually make sure that this is energy efficient and not going to be an energy burden on the rest of the community. And my last point would be as well echoing what another speaker said about using the pavilion possibly to do some community inclusion, whether that be sports within the community, maybe doing a theater or the arts, maybe an art show. But with this space and kind of the expansive area that offers and the lack of sort of development within the immediate blocks, I do think that could be a very cool reuse of the space. Thank you.
Thank you. Meg?
Next is Chris Stritzel.
Hi, everybody. So I just have a couple of comments here that I want to make on this project. I'm happy to see some creativity with this design, as the project's design does break with some standard apartment building designs that have been proposed and are going up around town. As we know, architecture is a form of art, and while this type of art is confined by economics and engineering capabilities, it's still great to get creative when it's possible. This is a project where creativity was played with. In my view, the new design invokes mid-century design, which is a critical component to the Lindell streetscape, especially nearby. It's a project that will add density and will add more variation to an already unique variation of buildings in the neighborhood. And that's one of the components that makes our cities great. The others, of course, being people and culture. Look at a city like DC. They have new and old buildings blended together, with facadism being recently used to make unique streetscapes that are vibrant and accessible for everybody, while retaining the city's architectural heritage. It also allows a city, which is landlocked, much like us, and limited by height restrictions, to get denser. In their case, they lose some to gain some, and that's the same case at the Optimist site. HOK proved that they had an answer to a huge challenge, and I feel that they delivered well by blending the past with the present and future. It's amazing that our homegrown, world-renowned architecture firm could get to work on this project and build off of the legacy of designing and having built iconic structures in our community. This is coming from the standpoint of a young college-age adult who wants to see the city grow and thrive. We're really at a turning point in our city's history. Things are looking up for us, and architects and developers are being pressured to do better projects than ever before for the benefit of the city. A project like the revised Optimist proposal demonstrates this task. It's not easy, but at the end of the day, the benefits of being creative and just stepping outside of the box a bit leads to much better outcomes in the long run than some might expect. In conclusion, I am in support of this project from the viewpoint of a young and urban-minded person. I want to see St. Louis thrive and see more creative buildings go up all over town for the sake of our city. So let's get more of these things going.
Thank you. Meg?
Next, we have Chico Weber.
Yeah, hi. Can everybody hear me? Okay, so I'm coming as a resident of one of Lux Living's properties, and I really got to say that, for me, who's born and raised here in St. Louis, was really hard to find more of a modern property that had, I guess, the amenities that you would expect and the quality of living that's just a little bit newer here in St. Louis, at least in the price range we were looking for. And Lux Living just happened to be able to provide that for us. They're, even through the construction of us like living in this building, they were quite accommodating for it. And I think their attention to detail in our property and just the quality of, you know, our living situation here, I think they're going to apply that same level of quality in a historic building and continue to embrace the, you know, the future of Optimus International. And I think that part of the legacy of keeping, you know, mid-century modern building going is to ensure that there is an optimistic future with it as part of the architecture, and to keep that story going forward, to make sure that there is that legacy with it. Because I can see the care and attention detail they apply to this building, and I'm certain that they would apply it to that one as well. So that's it.
Thank you, Meg.
So we have 3 more speakers, Matt Bowman, then Jerry Beckley, then Cindy Lefton.
Hi, yeah, I'm also speaking as a tenant of Lux Living's building right now. I moved in during construction as well and became acquaintances with Sid, kind of a necessity, out of, you know, talking to him with some issues I had and everything. But now that the building is done and I've talked to him, I am also very supportive of their ability to make good on these promises. I'm actually, after looking at this newest proposal, I'm also very optimistic about it. I support it fully because I think St. Louis does have a rich history, and it's very, very important to preserve that in every way we can. But why bother having a rich history to enjoy if there's no one here to enjoy it? And I think properties like this and development like this is super important for St. Louis, especially at this pivotal moment in our economy, to get, you know, younger generation in here. I'm speaking, you know, as someone who was born and raised on the east side of St. Louis and the Illinois side, moving over here to Central West End. I'm very hopeful for the future of St. Louis. And I know Lux Living is catering to what I think is that progression. We've had several events and everything that gets a lot of people that live here at the building, a lot of younger people excited to be in St. Louis, excited to continue to stay in St. Louis rather than move away to what seems like more enjoyable cities. So I think a proposal like this, like, it does keep the rich history of the building enough and also progresses it and makes it more urban, more livable, more walkable, as I know someone else said. I think it's super important compromise. I think it's a perfect compromise to, like I said, get that progression in St. Louis that we so desperately need, rather than just continue to lose younger generations to other cities. So I'm in full support of this proposal.
Thank you, Meg.
Next is Jerry Beckley.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, my name is Jerry Beckley. I am also a current resident of Lux's newest building, the Hudson. And I thought it was important for you guys to know what you're getting yourselves into, since Lux is known for incentivizing tenants to speak in their favor. I thought it made sense for you to hear the other side of the story. So first, I have to say that I understand and I'm aware of the risk of speaking out about my experience with Lux, given how litigious they are with their past tenants. But I can say with confidence that everything I'm about to share is 100% accurate. And I have text messages, emails, recorded conversations, and screen recordings of group chats, some of which have since been deleted by Lux management. I have all this to substantiate my claims, and I can provide them to the Preservation Board and any interested parties if deemed necessary. So since moving into the brand new Hudson building, residents have experienced the following: construction workers and staff entering our homes with no notice. I had no heat in my apartment when I first moved in. There were weekly power outages, frequent elevator breakdowns. The walls in my apartment were coming apart, and my washing machine needed to be replaced twice. In our resident group chat, residents have provided pictures of ceiling leaks, pest problems, and mold in the walls. With the recent heat waves, there have been issues with AC units not working properly throughout the building. Again, this is a brand new building. Who knows what shape this building will be in within the next year or two. With all the issues experienced by myself and other residents between last August and as recently as last week, after being denied a town hall meeting by management to discuss the issues and possible solutions, and after residents wrote negative Google reviews about their experiences only to have them deleted, I decided it may be in our best interest to organize a tenant union. Unfortunately, there was an attempt by a current resident to intimidate me from organizing this tenant union. And as of this morning, it has been 45 days since the Lux management and their attorney have all been aware of the situation with this resident trying to intimidate me, and they have literally ignored my daily emails about it for 45 days. I tried to organize a tenant union, arranged for residents to share their experiences with a journalist, and reported code violations to the city. And in return, I've been retaliated against by Lux. Making an example out of outspoken residents prevents other residents from also speaking out. Intimidation, threats of legal action, and turning a blind eye to resident harassment. This demonstrates that Lux has absolutely no regard for the people who live in their properties. Their only concern is profit. So why am I still living here despite these negative experiences? It's because Sid wanted to silence my voice by offering to let me out of my lease in exchange for removing my negative reviews or not saying anything negative about Lux in the future. I would not agree to that. So I'm still here, yet my reviews were deleted anyway. Myself, along with other residents, have wondered how Vic and Sid have been able to leave a trail of victims from several of their properties without ever being held accountable over the years. When an organization has to rebrand itself multiple times to conceal its pattern of deception and offer rent credits to residents in exchange for positive Google reviews and have residents sign NDAs, at some point, someone has to decide that enough is enough and stop rewarding these people with the opportunity to continue to line their pockets while disregarding the people who live in their buildings in St. Louis neighborhoods. Ignoring Lux's past and present transgressions and allowing them to move forward with no accountability erodes the people's trust and beliefs in the systems that were meant to protect them and their neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg.
Our last speaker is Cindy Lefton.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the time. And I've listened a lot, and the plans are certainly very impressive, but it's paper. And the devil is in the detail, and it's in the implementation. And I happen to live at 5560 Waterman, which is directly behind the Chelsea. And some of the things that I experienced personally as a condo owner in this neighborhood for almost 40 years and going through the development was very challenging. And again, I'm speaking on my own experiences. I'm not representing anybody. I am my own person. And I can tell you what I went through, which was we had a fence around our parking lot that was a solid fence. It's been there for the 40 years that I've lived here. And with the Living Lux development, that fence collapsed. We asked multiple times to be involved with the planning of that fence. They told us that we could. And then all of a sudden, one day, a fence popped up behind us. Now, what was significant about the fence that we had was there were no gaps. This new fence all of a sudden had gaps that a dog, even possibly a small child, could get through. We didn't have that before. We also noticed that the fence was about the replacement fence was about 6 inches shorter than our original fence. When we brought that up to the crew, their solution was instead of replacing the entire fence, they soldered pieces onto the existing fence, which are already rotting. And so this is a fence. Well, if I wanted to replace that fence and pay for it myself, I would have to go before the preservation board and get that approved. So my question is twofold. Number one, where was the oversight to make sure that the fence that was replaced was the same quality as the fence that was knocked down during this construction that withstood for 40 years? Because again, if I did that fence, I would certainly have oversight from the preservation board. And if we have a problem with the fence, or maybe a tree that's half in the Living Lux development and half on a property of another building, is one day just cut down without any discussion at all, because it's half on their property. My question to all of you that are going to be around this is, how are you going to deal with it? Because this is just paper. What I experienced during the implementation of a development, we had to go out and hire an attorney. And because we were told that's what you need to do by the city of St. Louis, because there is no oversight, because they can say and do whatever they want to on paper and in these committees. But when the rubber meets the road, that's a whole different situation. So I would say to you, lock it up. And as far as, being able to speak freely, I would say to the Preservation Board, if we as citizens cannot come before this board and speak our minds and our experiences without the fear of getting a subpoena or some kind of letter in the mail from Living Lux, then I would ask you, the board, to really revisit your processes and policies, because we should be able to come and speak up and speak freely and not have to be afraid of, are we going to get something in the mail? That's your job, to make sure that we citizens can speak freely. That's the whole purpose of these open meetings. And we shouldn't be worried whether we're a tenant or an owner about coming to these meetings and not being able to speak up and not being able to share our experiences. I have a feeling that you're going to approve that building. And I would just say to all of you, lock it up and lock it down and make sure that they're following what they say they're going to do. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Meg. Is there anybody else?
That was the last speaker.
Commissioner Allen, have you got a motion?
Yes. I move that the Preservation Board withhold preliminary approval of the proposed demolition, as the Optimist International Pavilion is a high merit building under the Preservation Review Ordinance, a contributing resource to the Central West End Historic District, and a significant element of the historic architecture of the city of St. Louis.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, Commissioner Allen?
Well, I mean, the applicant has certainly put a lot of effort into this project. There's a lot of strong design thinking, but in the end, our job here is to protect a high merit resource from demolition. And this does constitute demolition. And we face this issue at the Engineers Club, where I think this applicant also went pretty far to accommodate us. But in that vote, we denied something that a proposal that kept more of the protected resource than two walls, which is what we're voting on here. So I want to be consistent. I don't want to set bad precedents. I want to preserve this resource for the future, despite all the other good things that might be on the table. So that's a no from me.
Commissioner Robinson, a comment?
Yeah, I'm torn. Reviewing all of the evidence, I'm in agreement with Commissioner Allen. But obviously I live 2 blocks away from this building, and I see it every day, and I understand that nothing in the 14, 16, 18 years that I have lived here, I've seen nearly half of that where there was not much of anything going on at the Optimus International building, and that's unfortunate. And I don't envision that really changing with Commissioner Allen's recommendation. yeah, so it's tough for me. I think HOK has done a really good has been pretty thorough in their design and how it relates to the existing building. You know, my concern is that, yeah, it's only 2 walls being saved, but you know, from an architectural standpoint, I think they've done a really good job. I am curious about the other program, since with this program, it's nearly impossible to do more than what we have, and I understand that. So probably curious about that. I'd like to know what other programs are possible. Also, are they feasible from a development standpoint? You know, as also a developer, I look at both. Well, architecture being my first means of income, I guess. But as a developer, I also look at this and ask myself, you know, at what point are we shooting ourselves in the foot with not being able to develop a property? And we have plenty of examples throughout the city that fall into disrepair because ultimately, while we wait, there is no development that comes along because it's just not feasible. So again, I'm torn. Though probably would be leaning towards approval with a number of conditions, including the ones that Jim Dwyer listed.
Okay, Commissioner Killeen, comment?
Well, I just want to say I feel for the building owner of the Optimist Club because they're shackled to this building and they can't seem to rid themselves of it. As far as I'm concerned, if you want approval in the Central West End, you really have to work with that board. And from the testimony we heard from Mr. Dwyer, there was no communication since April. And I think had they worked with them and gotten, you know, on the same page, maybe the outcome would be closer to their liking tonight. But without that, it just shows that they're not working with the neighborhood. So, thank you.
Alderman Coder, a comment?
Yes, Chairman, and maybe I misinterpreted. I listened to Mr. Dwyer from Central West End and read his conditions, and I thought it sounded like the developer was willing to accept and abide by those. Maybe I read that wrong. I guess I'll echo some of Commissioner Robinson's comments that, you know, we all drive by this building and see it all the time, and I know many of the speakers here have grand plans, but the reality is no one has stepped up to buy this building and propose a rehab of it. This developer's been working, it sounds like, you know, with the owner, with surrounding neighbors, trying to respond, maybe not in as timely manner as would be prudent for them, to the neighborhood's concerns, and trying to save a portion of this building. It's interesting. I've heard some speakers today who, in projects past, have proposed the very facadism that they now oppose. I think this design strikes a good balance. We keep the front of the building. We create a building that is a much more modern, livable building for tenants, and it accomplishes what we desperately need in this city, which is more density, more residential density, a speaker towards the end mentioned about how we're a shrinking city. I mean, even since the last census, we've lost almost 10,000 people in this town. And unless we're going to create housing that people want to live in and makes them want to stay in the city of St. Louis or move to the city of St. Louis, we're going to continue to shrink. And I think this is the type of newer development that people want to see. I think that's evidenced by the fact that we had some negative comments, but mostly positive comments from surrounding neighborhoods. And I remember that was true of the previous proposal, which proposed a full demolition. So I'm going to oppose Commissioner Allen's motion. Maybe I'm in the minority here, but I think time is not going to be kind to this building or its redevelopment hopes. And I think we should move forward with what appears to be a viable project.
Commissioner Hamilton, are you at this meeting? Commissioner Richardson, are you at this meeting?
I joined 10 minutes ago, but I haven't heard, so I don't know the full testimony, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay, thank you. Did the commissioner wish to speak again?
Yes, Chairman. The only thing I was going to say was, yeah, my understanding per Jim Dwyer's testimony was that, the applicant had satisfied the requirements from April, and there were additional requirements that were being made, and my response was that I would be in support based on them based on those additional requirements, and probably a few more that I could consider. But at this point, we've got a different motion on the floor. So.
Thank you, commissioners. There's a motion on the floor before us that's been made and seconded. The motion is to withhold preliminary approval of the proposed demolition. I'm going to call a roll. Commissioner Robinson, on this motion, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Colleen, on this motion, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen, on this motion, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Alderman Coder, on this motion, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Richardson abstains. Commissioner Hamilton is absent. We have two vacancies, 2 yeses, 2 nos. The chair casts a yes vote. The motion carries. Commissioners, we're going to take a 2-minute break. Commissioners, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay then. Thank you all very much. Calling agenda item B, 700 Allen.
Hey. It's in the right order. This is not okay. All right, there we go. All right. I am Andrea Gagan with the Cultural Resources Office. This is 700 Allen, Soulard Historic District. This is the area of, this is the building itself. The area of work is in this back portion of the building along 7th Street. This is the one-story portion of building where the proposed restaurant roof deck is proposed. And the applicant applied for and received a building permit in June 2021 for an overall renovation. The applicant has now applied for a preliminary review to construct a roof deck and alter plans for the south elevation of the 2nd story, which would abut the proposed rooftop deck. The approved plans call for windows similar to what was existing along that elevation, while the current proposal adds a door and creates a window wall. The Cultural Resource Office is bringing the preliminary review before the Preservation Board as the proposed roof deck and exterior alterations do not comply with the Soulard Historic District standards. This was deferred from last month. Let's see, here is some drawings showing the floor plans of the 1st story, and this is the proposed restaurant. Shown the shaded area. This is the proposed roof deck. And then the windows would be along that 2nd story wall. Here's another rendering of the proposed roof deck and exterior alterations. The roof deck does not comply as it will be above a public facade and will be highly visible from the street. The handrails proposed to run along the parapet of the 7th Street side, which will make it visually dominant as the parapet wall is not tall enough to hide it. The roof deck will also be prominent when viewed from the south. Kind of a shot, what it would look like from somewhat from the south. The windows on the 2nd story wall also do not comply. The arrangement of the windows and doors on the 2nd story will be completely altered from the original 4 window openings. The 4 symmetrical openings would be exchanged for a non-historic configuration where the units are molded together to create a large glazed opening. The Soulard Restoration Group, well, here, let me go ahead and show you this first. This is a view of the original openings of the 2nd story. And this is just showing the visibility from 7th Street. This, some other shots from 7th Street. This is from down at the corner of Russell and 7th Street. The proposed roof deck and exterior alterations would be changes to the approved permit and do not comply with the Soulard Historic District standards. Both the roof deck and the changes to the 2nd story would be highly visible from 7th Street. The Soulard Restoration Group has sent a letter and has commented that they would have no opposition to the roof deck if the 7th Street railing is set back 4 feet from the parapet wall and that the doors and windows are appropriate style are used. Based on these preliminary findings, the Cultural Resource Office recommends the Preservation Board withhold preliminary approval as the roof deck and alterations do not comply with the Soulard historic district standards. We have not as yet received any revisions to the original plans.
Commissioners, questions?
Any word from the alderman?
No, although he is here.
Thank you.
Chairman, may I?
Yes, of course. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to be recognized before I just start. I've still not talked to the applicant about this.
I'm sorry.
What's that?
I thought you were pointing at something on the ceiling. I did not realize you were trying to catch my attention.
No, just, I've spoken with Mr. Gibbs and the Restoration Committee, and I guess echo their sentiments. Just move the rooftop deck, receded 4 feet from the sidewalk on I guess that'd be the east side. I think we're fine with this. And in terms of windows on that newer wall, as long windows and doors, as long as they sort of look historic, I don't really know that we care about having the original configuration, especially if patrons are going to be coming and going. I don't think the original configuration probably included doors. So I think that can get worked out if they that I think we're, I don't know, I've never talked to the applicant. All right, we just wanted to bump
broke up some. I didn't hear everything
back
he said at the end. I'm sorry, he broke up. I didn't hear the end of what he said.
I did not hear it either, Jack. Alderman Coder? Well, that's exciting. Let's hear from the applicant.
Apologies, is that better? Can you?
We'll pick this up in comments. Let's hear from the applicant.
Hi, everyone. My name is Albert Anderson. We are proposing the deck above the first story roof of this building to accommodate outside seating for a 2-story restaurant. We were trying to propose using the same windows or similar windows with the storefront door to be able to walk off onto the deck from the interior of the restaurant, 2nd story. I kind of got the message late about the railing moving 4 feet, which is not a problem off the side, away from the parapet sidewalk. I don't think that's an issue. We could do that. The other issue was the last time we were in this meeting, someone spoke of metal railing versus wood railing, which, that's you all's call on how you want that to look. But I think we could meet the requirements I've heard so far about what to do about it.
Questions for the applicant from commissioners? Hearing none. Meg, has anybody signed up to speak?
No, we don't have anybody signed up.
And Alderman Cody, you want to make this motion?
Okay, can you hear me, Chairman?
Now I can.
Okay, sorry about that. I've been relegated to the basement, so I'm still getting my internet figured out down here. Are you asking me to make a motion?
I am. Is that in preparation for any upcoming event?
It is. My office is now a nursery, so we got 10 days to go.
I've been there before.
Okay, this board is very excited for you guys. So congratulations for that.
Thank you. So I'll go ahead and I would board overturn the director's denial. Oh no, this is a preliminary approval. Overturn the preliminary approval and approve the rooftop deck and exterior alterations with the condition that the rooftop deck be set back 4 feet from the east wall and that the new windows and doors be approved by Cultural Resources.
there a second, commissioners?
I would second that. Alderman, if we could say that rail needs to be painted metal.
And the rail needs to be painted metal.
Thank you, sir.
That's in my motion.
And there's a motion made and seconded. Before we discuss it or vote on it, Mr. Anderson, can you live with that motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then. Discussion? Hearing none. I will call the roll in the same order that I did last time. Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Colleen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Alderman Coder, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
The chair abstains on this vote. There are 5 yeses, 1 abstention, 1 absent, and 2 vacancies. The motion carries. Okay, commissioners, thank you. Moving to agenda item C, 3409 Juniata.
Hi, everyone. It's Bob Bettis with staff. I have 2 quick ones. I will be fast, I promise you, so we can move on to more exciting things. First up, I have a prelim review for a new construction of a 4-unit apartment building at 3409 through 11 Juniata. This is, I think, our first review for you guys in the Tower Grove East Local Historic District. So I'll go through real quick. This shows you the site. Here's some more context sites for you. Here's looking west, looking across Juniata. So you have a mix of multi and single family. This is looking east towards the high school. Down the block further, there is some modern infill that predate the current standards in Tower Grove East. So to the proposal itself, it complies with the Tower Grove East code in general. Site plan here, you can see it aligns with the neighboring buildings. Here is the proposed front elevation. The applicant and architect have worked with us to refine the design. They've been awesome to work with. This is our latest proposal. Looks good. The sides of the building, the brick returns will match the spacing between the next buildings. Here is the proposal in streetscape. It's a smidge taller, but all in all, it aligns with the block, and we think it fits pretty well. Just so you know, we have heard from the Tower Grove East neighborhood group, and they are fine with the proposal. And that's why staff recommends that the board grant preliminary approval of the project. Any questions?
Questions for Bob from commissioners? Okay, thank you very much, Bob. Bob, do you know if anybody has signed up to speak for or against this besides the applicant?
No, sir.
Commissioners, do you want to hear from the applicant?
Chairman, I think we can forego that, and I move that we grant preliminary approval so this project is designed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I will call the order in the same order, roll in the same order. Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Colleen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Alderman Coder, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Chair abstains on this vote. There are 5 yes votes, 1 absent vote, 1 abstention, and 2 vacancies. The motion carries. Thank you, commissioners. Calling 3811 Russell.
All right, this one is it's also relatively straightforward. It's a prelim for a new garage and a curb cut. To be real brief, the Shaw Code states that any new curb cut requires your approval. So staff could not just bless it at the staff level. Staff is okay with the proposal in general. So I'll give you a quick little overview of what's going on. This is the site. There'll be a new curb cut right here in the empty space you see. There'll be a new frame garage in the rear with a brick veneer that faces the street. And it will have a nicely designed garage door, which staff is totally fine with. So quickly, some site stuff for you. Here's the aerial showing the site. Here's some context. Looking to the east, here's proposed site plan showing the proposed curb cut and the garage in the rear of the property. We had asked if they could put the garage behind the property itself. They couldn't do it because of an existing deck issue. Here is the lovely garage. And then here are 5 other existing curb cuts on this block of Russell. There is no alley, so this is why we have to have a new curb cut. We have not heard anything official from the neighborhood group, but staff obviously understands the need for the curb cut, and we feel that the board should grant preliminary approval of the project. The applicant is here. We have nobody else to speak on the item.
Is there a motion to use the previous roll?
I move that.
Second. All those in favor of using the previous roll signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we've adopted that motion with the previous roll.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Commissioners, at this point, we shift a little bit in our focus and we hear appeals of staff denials. It is also a moment at which I am going to leave this meeting and Commissioner Richardson will assume the chair.
Okay, we're on agenda item E. Do we have a staff presentation?
Yes. Just a second here. Okay, I'm Audrey Gagan, Cultural Resources Office, and I swear to tell the truth. I need to enter into the record enabling ordinance 64689 is amended by 64925. The Soulard Historic District Ordinance 62382, PowerPoint, the agenda, presentation, and the application. This is 1925 South 11th Street in Soulard Historic District. This is the location. Oops, sorry. The owner originally applied for a permit in January, which the Cultural Resources Office was in process of reviewing when observed that a portion of the work was already underway, including the installation of a wall to infill the recessed portion of the porch. And this is the site of elevation a few years ago, and this is a current view of the side elevation. So it was this portion here that was infilled at the top, the second story towards the front. The staff advised the owner that the new wall did not comply with the Soulard Historic District standards. The request of the owner, the Cultural Resource Office approved revised plans that did not include the wall. The owner then applied for an addendum to the permit to retain and finish the wall and install a window. That application was denied and the owner has appealed the denial. There was some additional work, including the installation of windows, as you can see in that recent picture on the front, and the closure of a window on the other side of the building that was done without a permit. The owner has now applied for a permit for those changes. Here's just kind of a brief thing. This Sanborn map shows the outline of the brick wall and the porch, which shows that this portion was not enclosed at it was open when it was built. This is just another up close view of the infill area and some context to the north and across the street. The addition does not comply because it was added to a semi-public facade that is not at the rear of the building, which is not allowed under the Soulard Historic District standards. The wall was constructed without a permit and it does not meet this historic district standards. The alderman has expressed his support for the project, and the Soulard Restoration Group is also in support of the infill with a few modifications to some window openings, which I believe the applicant is going to show you. Based on these preliminary findings, the Cultural Resources Office recommends the Preservation Board uphold the director's denial of the infill porch as it does not comply with the Soulard Historic District standards. Any questions?
So I have one. So what the Soulard Restoration Group was proposing doesn't change, or staff doesn't do it for staff?
Well, it still doesn't, I mean, the problem is that it still doesn't change the fact that it's being infilled, and that's the whole issue for us.
Got it.
I have a question, Andy. There's some previous infill, it looks like, in.
Yes.
And was that reviewed by Cultural Resources?
No.
Or the Preservation Board? That was just done?
Yes, it was done. The first floor was done a long time ago. The second story portion that was done by a previous owner some years ago, but it was not reviewed by our office.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, can we hear from the applicant then?
Hey guys, my name is Matt Cassidy. I'm one of the owners of 333 Realty.
Okay, so Matt, can you state your address then?
1925 South 11th Street.
And do you affirm that everything you're going to say is the truth?
I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth.
Okay, proceed.
Do we have the PowerPoint or the PDF document that I shared? Okay, perfect. We found it. Okay. First, thank you for the commissioners for being on. I feel like this is more of a longer call than usual, so I will be super quick. Thank you to Andrea Gagan as well. Andrea, you've been great with communication. You've been super patient with us. I feel like anytime we send you an email, you respond super quick. I feel like a lot of times you hear bad feedback about cities, but City of St. Louis is doing great in my eyes. And then also the SRG, and then our Alderman Jack, thank you so far for the support with this. And then if you could move to the next slide, please. Okay, so we're talking about 1925 South 11th Street. I just want to kind of clear up a couple things as well too that Andrea pointed out. So one, we did submit the plans in January. We wanted to hit the ground running with this as quickly as possible since this was our first development and we knew construction is going to get delayed. So we preliminary put up a wall to enclose it because there's no electric to the building. We wanted to make sure our contractors could work and seal it off from the elements before February hit. Once we found out when the plans were denied due to the wall, I asked if we should take down the wall at this time, and I didn't get an answer saying, no, you don't have to take, or yes, you do have to take it down. So we kept the wall up. The other thing with the windows as well too, take complete ownership of this. This is our first development. Talking with our architect, I thought the communication was there that we were going to replace all windows. For whatever reason, we didn't communicate effectively to them. The moment Andrea let me know about this, I went back to our architect, got plans drawn up, and submitted them as quickly as possible. She brought up another element, which was the south wall that's kind of a little bit pictured where it was a partial wall. Our architect at the time did not provide plans for the south wall from a view from the road. The moment we found out about that, we submitted plans for the south wall as well too, and those plans are currently in for the approval stage as well. And then if you could scroll down to the next one. Okay, so this is the infill. So this picture on the right was actually taken in this past December. So you guys can kind of tell the gray vinyl siding. So we're wanting to actually eliminate that, and we're looking to infill that. If you could go to the next slide. So this is the plans that we'd like to do. So what we're going to plan on doing is in the yellow, as you can tell, we're going to infill it with hardy board-like siding to give it that wood look. Right now, this building, as the plans sit, architecture on the outside is amazing. On the inside, what we want to do is we want to make it a little bit more functional because we're looking to rent this for over $3,000 to give you an idea. We want to bring like a high quality tenant into Soulard. So we want to add a gigantic walk-in closet as well too, for functional day-to-day now. If you could scroll down. And then, so originally when we were going through the plans, what we wanted to do is we reached out to Maureen McMillan. So Maureen McMillan, she does, she helps with taxes for historical projects. So she actually pulled this up, the 1875 Compton and Dry survey. So I'm not familiar with the one Andrea shared. This is the one we got. In this picture, we really can't tell if it is a, if it's an infill or not infill. Can we go to the next one? So I was talking to our city inspector, Mike Wood. I was kind of talking to him a little bit about the project. And Mike said, if you can kind of show what projects in Soulard have happened before with infills, it kind of helps you out. So I kind of cruised around Google Street View. This building at 1825 Ann Avenue looks like a full flounder house to me, and they did an infill. Next one, 1021 Geyer, right on a corner intersection of Soulard. I guess vinyl was popular back in the day. So this one almost looks like it was wrapped in vinyl, and they did an infill on this one. This one, 2010 South 11th Street. So literally right down the street from our house. This one can be seen from the street as well as from the back alley. This has vinyl siding on an infill. Another reason that we want to infill it is because underneath it is an office space. When we first acquired the property, we could see weathering that was taking place. So one of our concerns is with wind-driven rain or weathering, that it could impact the home, and then it could cause some hazardous environment such as mold down the line. And then this is the letter. Had a great call with Jay Gibbs, showed Jay Gibbs our original plans. He said, if you can tweak a couple of them, we'll support you. He says, we have no argument with the applicant's wish to move this section of the north frame wall out, even with the existing wall, and feel this will improve the overall appearance of the side. However, we ask that a dummy window with enclosed shutters, appropriate trim, be directly placed above the main entrance as shown in the revision. The third small window on the front facade should be closed in by one or two small shutters and painted black to match the new windows of the front facade. And then if you can go to this, so this would be the ideal plans, y'all. So front top one on the left, we're going to put a black shutter, and then to the right, as you can tell in the infill, putting black shutters and putting that trim on the bottom to match the door basically downstairs. And yeah, that's what we have for y'all.
Hey, and Andrea, have you seen that before, those drawings?
These, yes, well, we got them like, I guess, last week.
And what's your thought on the infill on the front facade?
Well, I mean, they've already put the window in. As far as the shutter, I mean, personally, I think if they're going to do the shutter closure, they need to, I think the two shutters look a little bit better, even though it's a small opening. But they're allowed to do that. I mean, under the standards.
Alderman Carter, did you want to testify first? Or have any comments?
Sure, Mr. Richardson. My only comment is, I support the appeal with the conditions, set forth in the SRG's letter, and I appreciate Mr. Cassie and his team for working with the neighborhood on this. It's just for historical context. This building was in pretty rough shape when these guys bought it. This whole block, frankly, has some issues, and so I really very much appreciate their efforts to stabilize it and rehab this block.
Thank you.
I did want to say one more thing is the examples that were shown, we did not review any of those. Those were done, I think all of them were done probably before the historic district standards were in place.
Duly noted. And I should ask, any other commissioners have questions for Mr. Cassidy?
No, sir.
Okay. Has anyone else signed up to speak on this matter?
No.
Then, commissioners, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a question of staff?
Sure.
So any action on this denial one way or the other doesn't impinge what staff is doing to review what we just saw from Mr. Cassidy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You mean you mean the windows and everything?
Yeah, all of the works we've seen here, you'll still proceed and review
right
in every detail. Okay.
Okay, now do we have a motion?
Chairman or Commissioner, I'll make a motion if you'd like.
Go for it.
All right, I move that we overturn the director's denial and approve the infill at 1925 11th, subject to the conditions set forth in the Soulard Restoration Group's support letter, with final design details to be approved by staff.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, then I'll call the roll. Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Clean?
Yes.
Commissioner Coder?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Callow is gone. Commissioner Hamilton is absent, and Commissioner Richardson votes yes. So 5 commissioners voting yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to agenda item F, 2156 Forest Avenue.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Meg Lustow, Cultural Resources Office. I am here now to speak to you about 2156 Forest Avenue, aka 6845 Bruno Avenue. This is an appeal of a denial to demolish a one-story residential building. This is in a preservation review area in the Friends Park neighborhood. The owner and applicant is City Restorations LLC. I do swear to tell the truth, and I'd like to enter into the record ordinance 64689 is modified by 64925, the preservation review ordinance 64832, my presentation, the PowerPoint, and the agenda and staff report. So, 2156 Forest Avenue is located in a preservation review district where the cultural. Sorry, is someone speaking?
I'm sorry?
Sorry, I'm hearing a little bit of, I'm just hoping that we can mute anybody who's not speaking. Thank you. Located in a preservation review district where the Cultural Resources Office and Preservation Board have jurisdiction over demolition applications. The building is a merit structure per the definition in the ordinance 64689, as it would be a contributing building to a potential National Register Historic District. This is the site. This is exactly where it's located. And here's the building as it looks today. On February 22nd, 2022, an inspector, the owner first applied for demolition in January of 2021 and was denied by the Cultural Resources Office as this was a merit building in solid condition. On February 22nd, 2022, an inspector with the city's building division issued a stop work order for demolition without a permit and sent a violation letter to the owner. A note in the building division file indicated that work continued on February 23rd, 2022. The Cultural Resources Office was first alerted to the matter on April 18th, 2022 via a citizen complaint. In a call from the Cultural Resources Office to the building division, we learned of the earlier actions taken by that inspector, who then sent another violation letter. In May of 2022, the owner applied to demolish the remainder of the building. The Cultural Resources Office denied the demolition application as the building was determined to be a merit building in sound condition. The owner has appealed the denial, and the matter is now before the Preservation Board. The owner has stated that the rear portion of the building collapsed because it was in such poor condition. However, a visit by Cultural Resources staff in January of 2021 found a solid intact house. And board members, you do have a letter in your packet from Bethany Moore, who was on Cultural Resources staff at that point and personally visited the site. And we have some of the photographs that she took. So in reviewing demolition applications and preservation review areas, we consider whether there is a redevelopment plan, and there is not for this address. We look at the architectural quality. We believe that 2156 Forest Avenue is a merit structure, and there do not appear to be any unusual circumstances. We look at the condition, and I'm showing you some slides. The remainder of the building appears to be in solid condition. Photographs taken of the interior and exterior in 2021 indicate the building was in sound condition then, and I will now use the photographs provided to us by Bethany Moore, again, who was on staff last January and took these pictures and sent them to us. This is the exterior of the building last year. Another picture of the exterior. Although she and then director Dan Krasnoff were unable to enter the building, she did take pictures through the windows, and these are the interior photos that she sent to us. So we did receive a letter from a structural engineer, which was submitted to us after we had prepared the staff report. And I believe the appellant will choose to use that staff report, that structural report in his remarks, but I would like to note that the report appears to be based on photographs provided by the appellant and not a site visit. We looked at neighborhood effect and reuse potential. The block is a mix of residential institutional buildings with a church across the street. New townhouses are under construction on the parcels immediately to the south, and the surrounding blocks have well-maintained residential structures. As far as reuse potential, the reuse potential for this house has been compromised by the loss of the rear half of the building, but the remainder appears to be in sound condition and is located in a stable neighborhood. We have no information submitted by the appellant as to economic hardship, and there is no information on proposed subsequent construction. Just some more contextual photographs. So preliminary findings and conclusion, the Cultural Resources Office consideration of Ordinance 64832 and the specific criteria for demolitions led to these preliminary findings. 2156 Forest Avenue is located in a preservation review district. The remainder of the building appears to be in good condition and is sound under the ordinance. The building is a merit structure, as it would be a contributing structure in a potential National Register district. The building is located in a stable area and would have good reuse potential, and there are no immediate plans for new construction. Based on these preliminary findings, the Cultural Resources Office recommends that the Preservation Board uphold the director's denial of the application to demolish 2156 Forest Avenue, as it does not meet the criteria for demolition under the Preservation Review District Ordinance.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the director? I have one. So the engineer's report that we got, I looked at that and it doesn't actually make a finding of whether or not the building is sound under the ordinance. Is that correct? Is that consistent with your review?
That's correct, in my view.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, do we have the applicant?
Yes, my name is AJ Adewumi.
Okay, and your address?
1917 Rutger, St. Louis, Missouri, 63104.
And will you be telling the truth today?
Yes, I will.
All right, proceed.
So the building, we're doing a 28 townhomes in that same area. There were 3 buildings that were on that lot, 21, 56, 58. Forest was one of them, and then there were 2 other buildings. We applied for demolition for all 3 buildings initially to get the 28 townhomes that we're building in the site onto the site. They approved 2 of them, which was and 21, 56, 58. Forest was the last one. I had asked at the time when they denied it, I had Mr. Krasnoff, Dan Krasnoff, to meet me at this location. And I think the other lady that they mentioned also was there. At that point, there was, when they came in, we could not enter the building, number one, because there was water that was constantly gushing into the basement of the building. And that water has been leaking since even before we bought the site. We did not enter the building and left that day. And Mr. Krasnoff told me at the time, said, hey, if you don't agree with my decision, I don't know, maybe you should appeal to the board. I said, fine, we'll do that. And I immediately sent an email to him that same day to appeal the demo as we needed that building as part of the construction site that we were for the townhomes we were building. Due to unforeseen circumstances, COVID and all the other stuff, personally and my wife, we dropped the ball as far as getting on the board to get the appeal done. We went ahead and started the demo on the other 2 buildings, and in doing that, there were several trees on the lot and that they had to pull in terms of getting the demo done. In doing that, in fact, Mr. Bob Bettis from Cultural Resources alerted me to it and called me and said, hey, what's going on with that building? And I went over there and I saw the back of the building had been compromised. I didn't think it was going to be a big deal because the basement or the foundation is already compromised with the water running, gushing down, and we weren't allowed to go into the building to shut the water off. In fact, we got stopped by the city inspector when we were trying to do that. So, I cannot for 100% tell you exactly what happened to the back of the building. I just know that the building wasn't stable anyway. I know Andrea took pictures, but she did not enter the building. She did not go in the basement that was full of water. And so, I'm asking for the building to be torn down. We do need that site. If you see next to it, we've got 28 new townhomes that are getting built. We're pouring the foundation right now. We do need that particular site to finish what we need to do on the neighborhood. That building itself, Ms. Stowe was telling us that it's a merit building that fits the neighborhood. If you look at the rest of the neighborhood, the building itself looks like nothing else in the neighborhood. The rest of the buildings are on the other street next to it, and it just sits by itself. So I'm asking that we should be able to demolish the building and make sure we can get it annexed into the rest of our new construction that we're doing over there. So, and I do have my engineer, structural engineer, which I sent, he went and did a report, and he, if you guys have any technical questions, he can answer it. So.
Let's first see if any of the commissioners have questions for you, and then we can call your engineer up.
Just to clarify, did you just testify under oath that you do not know what happened to the back of that building?
I cannot 100% sure. I'm not sure exactly what happened to the back of that building.
So you own the building when a portion of it was removed?
Yes, I own that whole site. Yes.
Do you have any theories? Did somebody come in and knock it down?
I have no theories. No.
A tornado, anything?
I do not have, I have no theories. I don't want to, I have no theories. Let's just leave it at that. So.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners?
Yes. So you received a stop work order from Demolition on February 22nd from the building division?
We received a stop work order on that had nothing to do with demolition. The stop work order was when we picked up our permits, initial permits, and this is an error on my end. The permit was for, we had two, I guess when we submitted for construction, we had a permit for a parking lot and the buildings. I got a call from the city permit division, the building division, that said, hey, your permit is ready. So I ran down to City Hall, paid the fee of, to get my permit going, and didn't look to see that the permit just referred to a parking lot, which was really strange because the cost of a parking lot was that they put on there was $2 million or whatever. So when we got the stop work order, that was what it was for. It was for it. So we had to, because the rest of the building hadn't been approved yet, and we had to find out why. And we found out that it was still stuck in the street department, and that took another month or month and a half to get it out of the street department to get a full permit. So that's what the stop work order was for, not to do with the demolition.
Did you discuss the demolition ever this year with the building inspector?
With the building inspector in the area?
Did you, discuss demolition after that letter or before that letter?
Well, we had the demolition for the other two buildings, but I was
not for this address. For this address.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
I'm asking specific to this address.
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Board Member Richardson, may I interject for a moment?
Go ahead.
I'm looking at the printout from STL City Permits. The Tommy Chanitz issued the stop work order on February 22nd. On February 23rd, wrote, site visit reveals demolition work has continued despite stop work order posted. See photos.
Can I say something? That's not true. The inspector has been to our site several times, and he would come in and talk to the construction guys there, and we always told them to call our office. Everybody's got my cell phone number. They've got my partner's cell phone number. The only reason why he stopped that site was because, again, our permit was not for what we were supposed to be doing at the time. We hadn't gotten a full permit now, and even after we got the full approval, we still hadn't come in and stop people again. And we finally had to say, hey, dude, if you have a problem, call us. We have everything that we're supposed to do. That's the only reason why he stopped it. It was because the permit we picked up was for a parking lot that's going to be added to the site. And we hadn't picked up the full building permit at the time. So that's the only reason why he stopped.
Okay, we'll weigh the evidence. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions of the applicant? Okay, did you want to call your engineer?
Yes, sir. Aziz, you available? Hello?
Yes, I am.
Yep.
Okay, could you state your name for the record?
Aziz Kadrich.
And your address, Mr. Kadrich?
9922 Matterford Lane, Afton, Missouri, 63123.
Hello?
I think you are muted if someone is trying to talk.
Oh, sorry about that. I muted myself there. Do you state that you will tell the truth in your testimony?
Yes, I do.
All right, proceed.
Okay. Is there any particular question for me?
Do you want to go over your report, or does it speak for itself?
I think the report pretty much speaks for itself. Basically, what I am stating in my professional opinion is that it is unsafe to attempt repairs to this building. I think basically it is too far gone to attempt to repair it. If it's unsafe to enter the building for anyone, then it is basically also unsafe for any worker to attempt to enter the building and attempt any kind of repair. The building could be left as is and access blocked to it and not touched, or it could be demolished, essentially. I believe those are the only two options, really.
Okay, do we have any questions for Mr. Kadich?
I have one question for Mr. Kadich. Did you ever inspect this building before half of it was missing, or was that the first time you saw it?
No, I did not. This is the first time that I've seen the building.
Thank you.
I guess I want to ask you two, under oath, you're stating that this building that looks completely stable to me as a registered architect and could be saved, you're saying it's about to fall down? Remember, I remind you that you're under oath.
I understand that. I am saying that per my report that I wrote, the building is in danger of further partial or complete collapse.
And I want to just pursue that. You said that it could be left alone as one option and boarded up. So if you left it alone here, what's your opinion on whether it would be able to support, the exterior walls would be able to support their current loads for the next 6 months?
For the next 6 months, possibly they could. For the next year, less likely, because over the next year, we're going to have another winter season. We could have heavy snow loads. We could have further, heavy rains in the fall. There could be a windstorm that comes through. If you look at the back of the building, we see loose bricks. Over time, more and more of those are going to come loose. This is what I mean by, partial collapse. This could happen slowly over time. It could happen in larger parts over time. There is in one of the photos in my report, you can see that there's an open area where water can enter the basement. So, we're going to have additional water entering the basement. The presence of the water is going to cause additional damage to the building. The floor framing is likely going to rot further. So, over time, this thing is only going to get worse. I don't think anyone can tell you how long it's going to be here. If an earthquake were to hit right now as we speak, this thing could collapse completely. It could be there next 6 months. It could be there for a year or a few years, but it will definitely only going to get worse over time.
Thank you. And then on your report, it says you based it on a visual observation of the photos. Did you visit the site?
No, I did not.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask another question, Mr. Chairman?
Go right ahead.
All right, Mr. Kudrich, the appellant states he does not know how the building entered into this condition with removal of half the building. In your professional opinion, do you have any guesses how a building might end up like this? What would have inflicted this damage, natural or man-made?
Well, the applicant has informed me that a contractor was removing trees in the backyard, and that one of the trees, I guess, fell on this building. Based on the photos that I see here and in my report, a tree falling on this building could cause some of this damage, but probably not all of it. I think, if a tree fell on it, obviously the tree is not here visible in this photo. So the tree has been removed since. And as the tree was removed, it's possible that some of the brick that might have been partially left standing was also removed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Kedridge? Okay, do we have any other people signed up to speak on this one?
We do.
I'd like,
Dan, we do. Dan Krasnoff is here.
Okay, Mr. Krasnoff?
Hi, can everyone hear and see me?
Yes, Mr. Krasnoff, welcome back.
Thank you.
Can we have your address?
Sure, my address is 604 South Washington Square, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
And do you state that you'll tell the truth in your testimony?
I will tell the truth.
All right, proceed.
All right, so back in early 2021, our office received, I was the former Cultural Resources Director, our office received a demolition application for 2156 Forest and a building on Bruno. I don't remember the third building exactly, but the building on Bruno was an old Masonic building that had been heavily worked over time and was almost completely unrecognizable for whatever its original design was, which was unfortunate. And then additionally was this demolition at 2156 Forest Avenue. The interesting thing about this demolition proposal was that when it came to our office and a site visit was conducted, there was actually quite a bit of continuity at that corner. This is only about a block and a half away from Manchester, and across Manchester is the site of the old Skull and Steel plant. So our sort of intuition as historians and architectural historians was that there was likely a connection between this node of much older buildings than is typical in Franz Park and the Skull and Steel plant, which is sadly gone. Based on that continuity with those older structures, and there's almost an identical building to this one right around the corner, kind of perpendicular to this building. based on that information, we determined that it was in fact a merit building and eligible to be a national registered district, or certainly a city district, which is also a criteria under the merit category. So Bethany was the person handling the permit for the most part, with some input from me. She reached out to the owners, the Ottawamnees, who I had dealt with for a couple of other projects, particularly one on Rucker Avenue in Lafayette Square. We expressed to them that we had concerns about that demolition and agreed to meet at the site, where we were told we would get a chance to go into the building and see the condition of it. We got out to the site. One of the workmen for the owner arrived as well. This is my recollection. The owner said, Mr. Ottawamnee, do you have the key? And the workman said, I don't have a key. I didn't bring the key. Didn't have the key. So we downshifted from going into the building to looking through the windows, where Ms. Moore took the pictures you all just saw. And from what we could tell from our inspection, the insides of it looked surprisingly intact. And even though the ordinance really only requires an exterior inspection, we felt like that only bolstered the case for preserving the building. And in addition, our exterior inspection, as I recall, we did not see any telltale damage of larger problems with the building. We told Mr. Ottawamnee that we had seen no reason to change our staff inclination to deny the permit, that we would approve the demolition of the Masonic building, which would allow, and the other building, which would allow for the project to go forward, but that we couldn't approve this. And our suggestion was to alter his townhouse development to incorporate this building into it. I left that meeting thinking that that was what the developer was agreeing to do, but reiterated to them that they should send in a letter or an email requesting an appeal of the denial, just in case they change their mind, to preserve their right to due process. I never heard anything more about the project before I left a few months later. But I will say that Ms. Moore's account of the site visit and the conditions of the building are in accord with my own memory of that as well. And I would encourage the board to deny this application, because to my mind, looking at the damage, as someone who looked at a lot of demolitions in the city in my tenure as Cultural Resources Director, I think this building is salvageable. One thing Ms. Moore and I recommended to the developer was that the main character defining features are on the front facade. And there certainly would be an opportunity, as long as they kept the scale of the addition down, there was an opportunity to get approval, or they didn't need approval because it's for construction, but that it looked to us like there was even an opportunity to expand the building a little bit to make it even more usable. And that's my recollection, and I would encourage you all to deny this demolition, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions, Mr. Krasnoff?
I have one.
No, sorry, you don't get to ask questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Sorry.
I have one for you, Mr. Krasnoff. So in your experience administering or seeing if structures meet the definition of sound under the city's ordinance, do you believe that this structure is a sound structure under the applicable ordinance?
Yes, I am extremely confident that this building will stand for well more than 6 months, even with the back of it missing.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have any other questions for him? Thank you. Meg, is there anybody else signed up to speak?
No, there's not.
Okay. Mr. Ottawamnee, I'll give you a chance to say any other comments you have, make any other comments you have.
Sure. Just to add that after I met with Mr. Krasnoff, I did send an email to him that day, letting him know that we were going to be appealing the case, and I sent a copy of that email to mixed up. I keep on to Meg anyway, to letting her know that we were going to appeal the case. When we left on that day, there was water running down in the basement. We discussed it with all three of us. Talked about how there was water constantly running down in the basement, and it's been running for about a year. But we weren't able to go in because we felt like the foundation was compromised, and that's what we discussed also with Mr. Krasnov. We talked about that also. That's why when I went back to the office on that same day, I sent him an email right away letting him know that we wanted to appeal. The other thing I want to add also is on this site right now, I get a lot of calls from the neighbors around the area, people entering that building, and I am concerned about someone getting hurt or going in that building and the foundation collapsing and someone getting hurt in the building. I do not want to take responsibility for for anybody getting hurt in that building. That's another big issue that I'm having right now, because I get calls from the neighbor next door who tells me, there's someone in the building now, and so that's another concern that I have. I want to go on record and say that I don't want any responsibility for anything that happens if someone enters a building and gets hurt or something collapses on them. I just, that's part of what I wanted to add onto this also.
Well, ultimately, you're the building owner, so you are responsible. Okay, so we have no one else signed up to speak. Do we have a motion on this agenda item?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Preservation Board uphold the denial of the application to demolish this building, which is a merit structure and sound under the terms of the ordinance. The demolition doesn't meet the criteria of the demolition review ordinance.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Any comments from the commissioners? I would just like to say that we heard from the current director, the former director, and the applicant's own engineer that the building would be considered sound based on the definition of the visible portions of the exterior walls and roofs being able and capable of continuing to support their load for 6 months or more. So therefore, under the ordinance, it doesn't meet the standard for demolition. So I'm going to call the roll. If there's no further comments from the commissioners.
I just totally agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Acting Chairman.
Acting Chairman.
Commissioner Robinson?
Abstain.
Commissioner Kleen?
Yes.
Commissioner Coder? Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson votes yes. Commissioner Hamilton is absent.
Coder's a yes.
Okay. Commissioner Coder is a yes, and Cal's absent. So Coder, Allen, Richardson, Colleen, it passes. The motion passes with a 4-1, 4 to 1 abstention. Thank you. Meg, is there anything else for the agenda today?
No, we will have minutes from the May meeting and from this meeting at next month's meeting.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Acting Chairman.
Bye.
Staff.
Now he's gonna do what?